are on mute. This will assist with eliminating background noises. So we do appreciate that. And my colleague is going to get us streaming on YouTube, and I will wait for her to let me know when we're ready. All right, I think we are good to go. Okay, so we are going to get started now with the public hearing portion of the May 7th, 2020 Zoning Board of Appeals hearing, and I will turn it over to the chair.
Sorry, I had to unmute and scroll back to the top of the document. Okay. Okay. Good evening. Matt, do we have all the board members back, by the way? David, can you hear us? I think you turned your camera around. I just want to make sure all the board members are with us before.
This camera button has that turn symbol on it. That is for you.
Therese, I'm just counting right now. Bear with me one moment, please.
Can you show David how to mute it too while you showing him how to do the camera?
Yes, and everyone is back, Tyrese.
Perfect. Okay. Good evening, everyone. We are meeting tonight under extraordinary circumstances. Our community, along with communities around the country and the world, has been observing social distancing and other health safety measures to slow the progress of the COVID-19 pandemic for many weeks, to allow normal or near normal operations of city government functions to continue. The governor of New York has declared a disaster emergency and has issued multiple executive orders, and the city of Rochester mayor has issued several local emergency orders, which together authorize the holding of this hearing virtually. Subject to the waivers of certain requirements of New York State open meetings law and the Rochester zoning code. In addition, earlier at our pre-meeting, we amended the zoning board rules and procedures to allow us to conduct this hearing as authorized by the governor and mayor's emergency orders, and to waive other requirements to allow us to proceed with this hearing as I will now describe. Primarily, these waivers involve the requirements for in-person attendance by board members, staff, and the public at this hearing. The emergency orders permit us to hold this hearing by teleconference with no in-person attendance, allow applicant presentations by teleconference, and require all public comments, both in favor of and opposed to the application, to be submitted in writing, by email, or by hard copy document mailed to the zoning office or deposited in the secure Dropbox located in the link entrance of City Hall. These written public comments were all required to be submitted by 5 p.m. May the 6th. Although the conduct of this hearing has been altered from some of our normal procedures, many things remain the same. All the normal notifications for this hearing, including mail, notice, publication, and the posting of notice, were followed. All the normal timeframes for applicant presentations and comments in favor of and opposed to the application remain the same. The normal staff report was prepared and posted on the city website. And most importantly, the board will hear, review, and make decisions about all the applications with the same diligence and using the same standards as required by the zoning code. Before we begin, I would like to explain the ground rules of the hearing. When a case is called, the applicant will be allowed 15 minutes to present their case to the board. The applicants and full staff reports were all posted on the city website at least a week ago and were available for the public to review. All applicants were advised to ensure that their applications were complete and included all information that they intended to present at this hearing tonight. As the application is presented, staff will, as reasonably possible, identify and show the pages of the application that the applicant is addressing in the presentation. Following our normal procedure, the board members may ask the applicant questions about the application. After the applicant's presentation is completed, staff will read into the record any public comments that were submitted after the staff report was completed and posted on the city website. First, those in support of the application, then those in opposition. These comments will be limited to 10 minutes if submitted by an authorized representative of an official recognized neighborhood association, and 3 minutes for all other comments. If reading the submitted written comments will exceed these time limits, staff will summarize the comments to fit within the time frames. If multiple submissions repeat the same comments, staff will summarize those comments. Public comments that were received in time to be included to the staff report will not be read into the hearing record. There will be no call-in comments. After the comments have been read, the applicant will have 5 minutes to offer any testimony in rebuttal. At the conclusion of the applicant's rebuttal testimony, the case will be closed. However, if the board determines that substantial new evidence has been presented by the applicant during the hearing, either during original or rebuttal testimony, the case will be adjourned and held over to the board's next announced hearing date in order to give the public the opportunity to review and comment on the new evidence. After completing all of the hearings on the agenda tonight, the board may take a short break, which will be announced. After the hearings and the break, the board will commence deliberations and voting on all the applications except any application that has been adjourned to another meeting date. Please also note that if your case is approved today, a written decision will be mailed to you within 15 business days. The decision will inform you of the next steps to complete the approval process. Before we open the first case, please note that we are all volunteers. I would like each of the board members to confirm their presence for purpose of a roll call and establishing a quorum for this hearing, and to introduce themselves and mention their area of expertise. Whew. Okay, got through that. Okay, so we'll start with Jim Bess.
Good evening. My name is Jim Best. I live in the northwest quadrant of the city. I've been a telephone engineer for just under 50 years.
Lashana Booth.
Hi, my name is Lashana Booz. I live in the Northwest District of the City of Rochester, and my background is contract administration.
David Carr. You've got to unmute, David.
David Carr. I live in the Northeast. I work at Kinea. I'm also a developer in the area. Thank you.
Thanks, David. Lorraine Jennings.
Hi, Lorraine Jennings, Marketing and Communications. I live in the East District of Rochester.
Cora Murphy.
Hello, Cora Murphy. I'm in the Northeast quadrant. I'm a licensed real estate broker, owner of 180 Realty.
Joe O'Donnell.
My name is Joe O'Donnell. I live in the Northeast section of the city, and I'm a practicing architect.
And I'm Tyrese Bryant. I live in the Southwest section of the city. I work in real estate and land use development. And I have a background in urban planning. Okay, and we'll get started. A quick question for you, Matt. Do you want to introduce the case, then I will swear the applicant in? Or do you
let's do that. So I'm going to open up the case and I'm going to make note of the site visits that we discussed during the pre-meeting.
Okay.
And then you can swear the applicants in. To all the applicants here this evening, what will happen as happens when we are in city council chambers, I will read the opening of your case, all of the information, including the case, the file number, the request, and that sort of thing. I will then reiterate the site visits that the board did. And then the chair will swear you in, just so you know what's going on. So case number one is, I should also mention all of the cases tonight were actually held from the March 19th, 2020 zoning board agenda. I mentioned that during the pre-meeting. I just wanted to mention it again. The March 19th, 2020 zoning board hearing was canceled as a result of the emergency declaration in the city of Rochester. So that's where these cases come from tonight. Case number one is file number V-032-1920. It's an area variance request at 55 Rockwood Street, located in the M1 Industrial District. The applicant is Mike Green of Lamar Advertising, and the purpose is to replace the existing east-facing conventional advertising sign with a larger digital sign, to increase the size of the west-facing conventional sign, and to raise the height of the structure by 13.5 feet, not meeting certain sign requirements. During the pre-meeting, it was established that all board members except Cora and Lashana visited the site, all others did. So we can now move to swearing them in and then to the presentation.
Hi, Mike. How many will you have speaking tonight?
2.
do. It's me and Jim.
Okay, so I'm going to swear you guys in. Do you solemnly affirm that the testimony you are about to give in this hearing is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
Yes, sir.
It's over to you guys. 15 minutes.
Okay, my name is Jim Newton. It's 55 Rockwood Street, Rochester, New York, 14610. I want to start by saying appreciate the city and the zoning board moving forward with the the zoning board of appeals so that we can keep business moving. So thank you for that, and good evening. I'd also like to say that if you know anybody or if you ever want to be on a billboard, this would be a good time to give us a call. So anyway, just trying to break the ice. We are returning tonight as a follow-up to our application from the January 23rd, 2020 to submit additional information as requested by the Zoning Board of Appeals. The additional information is in regard to a billboard located at 55 Rockwood Street, Rochester, New York, 14610. The additional information requested was that we take photographs of the proposed billboards from the nearby residential zone properties, photographic simulation of graduated heights, a more detailed justification for the increase in size and height and conversion to digital, and documentation showing New York State DOT approval and the standards needed to make that determination. As a reminder, this location is part of an application submitted on January 23rd. In our original application, we voluntarily withdrew a proposed digital location at 161 Norris Drive based on a few factors, including community feedback. Another component of our application was a proposal to remove 7 existing advertising structures totaling 11 advertising sign faces, and we did not alter that number with the withdrawal of the digital face.
You could just hold it right there, Matt. Thank you.
Yeah, thanks. Rochester's comprehensive plan, as expressed in the city zoning code, currently accommodates and permits advertising signs in certain districts and locations within the city. The code sets forth the districts where advertising signs are permitted and hence has deemed these districts and locations appropriate. Current code permits advertising signs in M1 industrial zones and all C3 districts within 660 feet of federal and state highways. Our proposed sign meets that criteria. It's located in an M1 industrial district, and our proposed sign meets all local and state spacing requirements, and we do have documentation for the approval from DOT. And if you'd like to move forward, if you're looking at the slide right now, which is the first slide, what we did is, if you can see this, the 3 black stars represent the closest residential zones to the billboard, which is in the middle with the V, yeah, right there. And the one to the north is Yarmouth Road. The one to the west is Hoyt Place. And the one to the east is the Eastwood Apartments. So those are the spots that we took the photos from. If you want to go to the next slide. Basically what we're showing at the Yarmouth Road is about 550 feet away. The end of the road is 550 feet away from our proposed sign. There's currently a sign there now, which you can't see. And what you're looking at is you're looking south on Yarmouth to north. And if you were to drive straight through those trees in that RG&E substation, you would hit the railroad tracks, and then you would hit the back of our building and the billboard. So if you can go to the next slide. We took some multiple locations. This is another picture from Yarmouth, and that what you see at the end of the road is actually the RG&E substation. And then if you look, that's the top picture. The bottom left is just that substation, and the right hand bottom side is from the sidewalk, what you currently see. The sign faces do not face Yarmouth, and the faces are not visible currently. It's has heavy tree canopy, and so what you would see is the back of the sign. You wouldn't see the face of the sign that is illuminated. We feel that the sign would not alter any condition on this existing street right here. So those are the pictures. If you go to the next picture, this is a picture from Hoyt Place. It's 1,174 feet southwest of our proposed sign. It's looking east or northeast. It's heavily canopied. We took this picture with when there's no leaves on the tree. So this is currently what you see when you're looking east. Our proposal is not to make this board digital. This board is to remain static. Our proposal for this one was just to increase the height and the size. And that's the current view. If you go to the next slide, that is just a closer view, zoomed in, looking at the billboard through the tree canopy currently. The sign is behind there, and if you know, it's behind there. So what we're looking to do is and you can, if you had a higher resolution, you could probably see it. If you raise it, it'll look the same, just a little bit higher. It's not very visible. And like I said, this is when there's no, you know, coverage of leaves. So this would be, I guess you would say, most visible. So that's from Hoyt Place. The next slide, please. This is from Eastwood Apartments. It's about 1,107 feet, you know, southeast of the proposed billboard. The middle picture is taken from the apartments, and we, you know, and then the bottom picture is just an additional. We don't think that you can see it now, and we don't think you're going to be able to see it when, if the proposed sign gets approved. So we, you know, that is the view, and I think there might be one more. Is there one more? The next slide. There's one more side, one more picture from we stepped away from the building. We headed towards East Avenue, just to give it a different perspective. And again, we don't feel that you'll be able to see the board regardless if it stays the same. You can't see it now. We don't think you can be able to see it if it does change. So that is that's number one, photographs of proposed billboards from nearby residentially zoned properties. Number two is the photographic simulation of the graduated heights. Now, if you know, what we are proposing, or what the board requested, we asked for 13.5 feet in our proposal. The board at last meeting requested they see heights of 5 feet, 10 feet, and 13.5 feet. And so that's what we did, both the west face and the east face. So if you go to the next slide, this is the current sign height. I'm not sure if Matt, you could circle it on, it's the white one right above there. Yeah, that's it right there. That's the current sign as a 10.636 billboard at the current height. And it's at 48.5 feet is what it is currently at. So the next picture is it's raised 5 feet, and that's increased to a 14 by 48, which is our proposed. This face, which is the east face heading west, is the proposed digital face. So that's 5 feet. The next slide is 10 feet. The next slide is 13.5. So if you go back and you can kind of, yeah, there you go. So that's what current 5, 10, 13.5 from the east face heading west, which was your request. If you go to the, I'm not sure if you guys have any questions, or just wait to the end. If you go to this is the west face heading east, so heading from the city to the eastern suburbs. If you look to the left over on off the 590 ramp, that's the current 10.6 by 36 billboard in its current state at 48.5 feet. The next slide, it would be 14 by 48 at 5 feet. Next slide is the 10 feet. And then the next slide is the 13.5 feet for a total of 62 total height. So that, and that face will not be digital. That face is to remain static, which it currently is right now. And that is hopefully the answer to your question on the photographic simulation of the heights. The third request was a more detailed justification for the increase in height and size and the reason for the conversion to the digital. The main reason for the request was that the board currently sits off of the expressway 375 linear feet. Traditionally, the boards are about 10 to 30 feet off the expressway. So there's a larger distance away from the road. So that's the main reason. Obviously, it would be easier for the clients to view and read at a higher height and larger sign. And the reason that sign currently is at that height is and size was because back, I'm not sure when it was, but it might have been 10 years ago, we had a board down in front of the business next to us, which is the record archive. And when they wanted to put their store in there, the economic development made a deal with us that we had to remove our billboard and replace it so you get into the entrance. And they allowed us the size of 10.36, what the board currently was at the time. So we just mimicked the size back then. That's what it was. As far as conversion to digital, we feel that the digital eludes a high-tech image for the city. We also feel that shows that the city embraces technology, and 75% of our customers are local, and our customers have been gravitating towards the digital billboards. And the digital billboards, because there's 6 advertisers, have a lower price point, which makes it more viable for a lot of businesses. And also, the digital billboards can be used for public messaging. And I think Matt, if you can go to the next slide. This is the documentation from New York State DOT and their criteria for the preliminary determination. I can read them. They're greater than 500 feet away from another off-premise sign on the same side of the road, which it is. Maximum size for any one sign is 1,200 square feet, which it is not. May not be placed in the right of way. It's not in the right of way. Will not obscure or interfere with any official traffic signs, signals, or devices. It doesn't. And may be placed in areas zoned for commercial or industrial activities. This is an M1, so it meets that criteria. The next slide is a email from New York State DOT Doug Johnson, I believe with the safety division. The bottom part that's in the red and in parentheses states, I'll just read the highlighted. It says, after reviewing this location, it appears that there is 550 feet of spacing between signs D and C, which was a close sign. And as a result, it appears that the digital upgrade would meet the criteria of the New York State DOT criteria in the department, the digital sign policy with the information presently available to them. So that is the approval from the New York State DOT local preliminary approval. And I think that was all of the information that you guys requested. If you could go to the next slide, Matt. That's DOT's work. That's just them measuring right there. So that's just them doing the 550, showing us that it is the distance. And the next slide. This is, as part of our proposals for the last couple of years, we've always said that digital billboards could be used for public service messaging in case of emergencies, and we happen to have one upon us right now. And when the pandemic started, I think it was back on March 20th, we fulfilled our obligation and our promise to donate boards to the city. We reached out to the Rochester Communication Department, and we put these billboards up, and they've been up since I think around March 20th. Pro bono. And this is one. And then these are, the designs went from city, and then it was handled by, it got put to an agency who did the creative for the city. And this is the city's creative for the second phase of advertising of stay home, social distancing. So if you go through these slides, those are just the copies of all the different billboards they were on. It was on 5 different billboards. The rate card value of it, I think, was around, $40,000. And that is all the information I have. I'm trying to get out of here in 15 minutes. So
Jim, that's going to be time for you.
okay, I'm all set.
Okay, great. So as Jim went through in the application, he presented a lot of the information we requested at the last hearing. We heard them, so I asked that you all please take that into account. So we'll start with questions, and we'll start with Jim.
Good evening again. Thanks for responding to our request from a couple of months ago. The photos do tell, in my opinion, a pretty good story. Could you just mention briefly about the lighting of the sign in the evening? I'm talking about the digital sign.
Okay, it's got state criteria where it can't be that we follow, and we actually with the cities, the state's criteria is that it does not exceed 5,000 candelia per meter squared during the day, and 250 candelia meter squared at nighttime. The city on our previous applications has made an alteration to the state's criteria from 250 candelia meter squared to 200 meter squared, and that's kind of been our new standard, and that's what we propose this time. Lighting has always been like a question, and I guess my response is we've had digital billboards up in city limits since 2009, and within the city limits, we've never had an inquiry to the lights being. Nobody's ever questioned the lighting or asked us to turn it. It's never been an issue. So we feel that the lighting is appropriate, and it's based off. You know, there's an electronic eye on the digital billboards, and the light coming out of it is based off how much light is in the surrounding areas.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Lashana,
No questions.
David,
No questions.
Lorene,
No questions.
Cora,
No, I think those pictures made a big difference for me. So thank you. No questions.
Joe.
Just a quick one. I was wondering if the applicant could explain how they arrive at 13.5 feet. Is there a formula? Is it just a guess? What is the criteria for making that 13.5 feet?
I'm gonna let Mike Green handle that one.
So the way we came up with that criteria is the current sign is a 10.636. So if you put a bulletin of 1448, we want it to be directly on top of where that is now, right where that line is. Essentially, that is the 13.5 feet.
Okay, thank you.
So the sight line to the top of the board is where we wanted the visual to begin. So by placing the 14-foot right on top of that board, it created 13.5 feet.
Got it. Thank you.
Yep.
And I don't have any questions. So thank you. And I guess we'll have Matt read. We're opening up for public comment. So Matt, will have you read the public comment and support first.
Correct. So this is the public testimony statement for, this is the written comment for 55 Rockwood Street, which is case number 1, file V-032-1920 for the May 7th zoning board hearing. All written comments were due on May the 6th, 2020 at 5 p.m. I will read all written comments received for this project. All other written comments can be found in the staff report. Please note that all comments were provided to the board in advance of this hearing. I have 2 public comments. One is from John Lembach, 105 Meg Street, 14607. To the Zoning Board of Appeals, dear Chair, the amended application to raise the billboard sign pole at 55 Rockwood Street. My apologies, I'm going to pull it up on here. Dear Chair, the amended application to raise the billboard sign pole at 55 Rockwood Street was, while simultaneously enlarging the billboard faces by 78%, will make these signs the most dominant landscape feature on the north side of Route 490 in the sunlit daytime hours, as shown in the applicant's photos on pages 17, 18, 19, and 20. This effect is magnified during nighttime conditions when the 200 lumens display will not have the sunlight to compete with for a driver's visual attention. Please reference the enclosed nighttime cell phone photographs taken on 4/11/2020 at 1:50 a.m. on a typical night for our area. And I'll display those photos after I finish reading the text here. These photos, taken at a probable lower luminance level than the proposed sign, demonstrate just how bright the new signage will be in real life. The cumulative negative effects of the proposed changes, raised height, 78% larger sign faces, and overly bright nighttime illumination, can be minimized by not raising the height above the current level and reducing the nighttime illumination levels to 50 lumens. The goal of the enlargement of the existing sign and raising the overall height is to outcompete the other nearby billboard signs for a driver's attention. Billboards also owned by Lamar Advertising. It is okay for Lamar Advertising to profit from their investment. It is not okay to profit at the public's expense. The public interest can be protected by allowing the enlargement of the billboard faces without raising the overall height of the finished billboard and limiting maximum nighttime brightness to 50 lumens. Making this lower illumination level of 50 lumens a general rule for all digital signage in the city should be a priority for the Zoning Board of Appeals. The residential areas along the Hillside Avenue neighborhood suffer greatly from the 200 lumens level currently observed for the digital signage located at 100 East Highland Drive near the Midtown Athletic Club. I will now go on to Mr. Lembach's 3 photos that he submitted as part of his testimony, which you are looking at the screen now. And one additional comment. This comment comes from Holly Petsos of 175 Browncroft Boulevard to the Zoning Board of Appeals as a follow-up to my statement at the last hearing regarding this case and the others involved along the Eastern Expressway 490, especially in regards to Perry Pizza 1 and my comments regarding the Highland Drive billboard in front of the tennis club. I want to comment that the level of illumination is too high, out of balance with the environment of the surrounding urban development that we want to see in our city environment. It's just too bright. Why do they need that height? There is a clear view from the roadway. Do we know if the houses to the northeast are going to see the sign? Halsted, Brentwood, and ends of Beresford and Yarmouth roads, because of a bend, are all to the north and east and are closer than you realize. At this point, I don't care about what guidelines say as to the acceptability of what is proposed. What my own eyesight says as to the lumens tells me otherwise. You have a say in determining this out as the board. The worst thing about this is that you are voting now without a plan that has been promised to us by the City of Rochester Zoning and Planning Department from way back to establish new regulations regarding billboards. We will have to put up with the results of this hearing even if the new guidelines are enacted in the near future. Examples being 2 billboards set forth above in this letter. That concludes the public comment period. The applicant has a 5-minute rebuttal period.
Okay, thank you. In response to the letters of opposition, this is Dan's. The purpose of the city's comprehensive plan is to encourage an urban renaissance and embrace technology with a focus on opportunity and community in the city. We feel that digital billboards can do that. While Lamar respects and takes into consideration the general public's opinions, as noted, we basically listen to the public on that 161 Norris Drive digital billboard. We'd like to base our applications on local and state regulations, not on opinions. Some of my thoughts to the write-ins, and I don't know if it matters or not, but the photos that were shown, I don't know if it was a mistake or just by design, but 2 of the 3 photos are not even the billboard as referenced in the application. I don't know if you want to go back to the pictures, but I'm not sure if it matters, but it doesn't matter to us. But that's not the board. So those are 2 different billboards in the next picture. Those are not the boards either. That's a 20 by 80 and that's a 14 by 48 at the corner. That's at 2 Rockwood Street, I think. We're talking about 55 Rockwood Street. It's known as the Ice House. So I'm not sure what those pictures represent. The 3rd photo is a correct photo of our current board, which we feel that the focus of the board is on the inside of the car and distorts the billboard personally. But you know, some of the language in the opposition letter, it states, is out to compete it's out to compete the other billboards signs for the driver's attention. Billboards also owned by Lamar Advertising. It's hard to answer these questions because why would Lamar Advertising or why would any company make an investment that's going to compete with themselves? I'm not sure what the points are. The letter also references lumens as the measure of light. The New York State criteria is candela per meter squared. So I can't respond to lumens because that's not a measurement of light that the city that we've been using, or this, it's not the state criteria. So I don't know what that is. And again, I'll reiterate, we have 6 big billboards within the city's limits dating back to 2009, some of them, and we've never had a complaint regarding the light that I'm aware of. Nobody's ever come forth to us. The second letter of opposition, the line that caught my attention was, it says, at this point, I don't care about what guidelines say as to the acceptability of what is proposed. Lamar, yeah, it's the second sentence. Like, Lamar's standpoint is we're the opposite. We actually care and follow guidelines, and that's actually why we're here tonight, presenting our proposal in this forum, and we appreciate your time. And, you know, just as a note to the second letter of opposition, I know that she doesn't care about guidelines or the acceptability of what is proposed, but her letter actually is past the due date or the time to get the letters in, but as a note. So it's supposed to be there before 5 o'clock is a technicality, but I'm just trying to say that that's what, you know, we're here to follow the rules. We're here to follow the rules, not, if we could run the business based on opinions, we wouldn't need this, I guess. So that's all we have to say. We appreciate your time.
Thanks, Mike. I just want to jump in here and note a comment you just made about the timing of the last email. So the email came in just a few minutes after 5. So in the email came in, I had spoken to the manager of zoning about the timing. We had a long discussion about the history of public engagement within the city and ensuring that people are able to have their public feedback entered. So our typical hearing process is when people don't get their comments in time, they have the opportunity to bring those comments to the public hearing. This is our first go around, as everyone knows here this evening, where people don't have that opportunity. So we did, so the challenge there is that the people submitting something may not have that opportunity. So we discussed it, I discussed it with the manager of zoning. We educated the individual that going forward, no comments will be accepted after, and no comments for any cases came in at all from the rest of the cases for the rest of the hearing. So it was discussed, and we erred on the side of you know, keeping in the long line of public comments for the city's processes. So.
Thank you, and not a problem.
Okay, thank you, Jim, and thank you, Mike. We'll close case number 1, and we'll go to case number 2.
Okay, let me get started here. Again, so I will introduce case number 2. I'll run through the site visit criteria that we did during the pre-meeting, and then the chair will get the applicant sworn in again. So case number 2 is file number V-045-1920. It is an area variance request at 725 West Ridge Road. This is in the M1 Industrial District. The applicant is Anthony Daniele of the Daniele Family Companies, and the purpose is to install 3 attached signs and 1 detached sign for a proposed car wash, Royal Car Wash, not meeting certain sign requirements. And as a reminder to everyone, this case was actually held from the February 20th ZBA hearing. The board requested additional information, and I'm bringing that letter up from what the board requested. And it looks like all members of the zoning board visited this site.
Okay, do we have Anthony with us?
Present.
Hey, so we'll swear you in and let you get started. So do you solemnly affirm that the testimony you are about to give in this hearing is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
Yes, sir.
It's all yours.
Dave Cox is with us as well. He's our representative from Passero Associates, so I'll let him take the lead since he's the engineer and did the design, if that's okay.
Okay, I just need to swear Dave in.
Go ahead.
Dave, do you solemnly affirm that the testimony you are about to give in this hearing is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
Yes, I do.
All right, the floor is yours.
All right, so just to give a little recap, when we came before the board's general feel was that it's a good use of the site. You know, it's an abandoned parking lot. It's not really being used to its full use. It's great to reuse something. You know, it's all impervious now. We're actually adding green space, adding landscaping, really dressing up the site to make it something better. The main comment or the main thing that came down to was a pole mounted sign that some members on the board and the city is trying to veer away from pole mounted signs. And they really said, you know, can we do something different? Can we get rid of the pole mounted sign? So we went back to the drawing board and we came up with a ground mounted sign that, as you can see right here. So I think that this really satisfies the major concerns that we heard from the last time we were at the planning board meeting. And I will keep this short because you have a very long agenda, and the president of Passero Associates is in later down on the road, and I don't want to hold him up any more than I should.
Okay, thank you. Anthony, did you have anything yet to add?
No, the process has been fair and good, and hopefully we did speak with the neighbor. There was a neighbor who had some opposing opinions in the previous go round, and we actually spoke with him, and I believe he has a positive letter that he submitted that I'm sure we'll hear. So that was a positive sign. Hopefully the board shares his turnaround of thought. So thank you.
Okay, great. We'll open it up to the board. So Jim, I'll start with you. Do you have any questions?
Thanks for the submission that you made. You've certainly made a much better looking sign that what you're proposing before. I'm very happy to see it. I know there's a very small sign right now, and the entrance to the property, the entrance to the old parking lot, is that going to go away or is that going to stay?
The entrance is going to stay exactly as is.
Okay, that's it. Thank you.
Lashana.
I agree with my colleague Jim's comments. Thank you very much for the resubmission, and I don't have any questions.
David. He's there.
No questions.
Okay. Thanks, David. Lorraine?
Thank you for the revised sign. It looks great. That's all I have.
Thank you so much. Cora?
I agree. I didn't love or hate the pole sign, but I really like this this new proposal a lot. So thanks.
Joe?
No questions.
And my only question, because this ground mounted sign doesn't tell us, that obviously, is that brick material the same material that's on the building?
Yes.
That's
okay.
correct.
And I really want to commend you guys. It looks fantastic. So we will go ahead and hear public testimony.
Thank you.
I should add to all applicants and board members, just as an FYI, the staff reports all have a page number at the bottom right. That's to, although the page I'm on doesn't have it, of course, but all the other pages have numbers at the bottom of the bottom right of the staff report, and that's for ease of questioning. So if applicants, want to refer to something, or if board members want to refer to something, you're welcome to note that when you're questioning. As far as public testimony, this is the public testimony statement for 725 West Ridge Road, V-045-1920 for the May 7th, 2020 Zoning Board of Appeals. All written comments were due May the 6th, 2020 at 5 p.m. for inclusion into the record. I will read the written comment that was received for this project since the publication of the staff report and posted on the website. All other written comments can be found in the staff report. And please note that these comments were provided to the board in advance of this hearing. This letter I am going to read is from John Lembach of 105 Meg Street, 14607, to Zoning Board of Appeals. Dear Chair, the Daniele family companies have submitted a much improved application for the proposed signage for their new car wash facility. The change to a monument sign incorporating a significantly lower overall height will help improve the vista of West Ridge Road as the surrounding neighborhood transitions from a heavy industrial Rust Belt look to a more nature-friendly suburban atmosphere as seen along the next 3 miles of the road. The total square footage of all signage on the property exceeds the allowed 128 square feet by a relatively small amount, 11.1%. My apologies. It is a small trade-off for a nice looking facility and an owner who has made a serious effort to improve this neighborhood. I withdraw my objections previously voiced at the February 20th, 2020 hearing and endorse approval of the revised application. And that is all the public testimony I have for that case.
Okay, thank you so much. Anthony, David, thank you guys so much. Stay safe.
Thank you all. Great job holding this meeting, by the way. Well organized.
Thank you. We'll move to case number 3.
Okay, case number 3 is file number V-047, 1920. It's an area variance request at 1290 Lake Avenue, located in the R3 High Density Residential District. The applicant is Suki Cintrone of University Preparatory Charter School for Young Men. And I do believe there are others here tonight too, just as an FYI to the chair for swearing people and other applicants with her. The purpose rather, to legalize the construction of a garage / shed along Maplewood Avenue, accessory to an existing school, not meeting the location requirements for detached accessory structures. And in terms of the site visits, all members visited case number 3 as polled during the pre-meeting.
Okay, great. Who do we have with us tonight for case number 3?
Hi, I'm Suki Cintron. I'm the Chief Operating Officer at UPrep Charter School. I also have with me Corey Bogart. He is a teacher for our Career and Technical Education program. I have Miss Tracy Harris, who is the Director of our Career Technical Education program. And I have Mr. Walter Larkin, who is our Chief Executive Officer of University Preparatory Charter School.
Okay, so I'm going to swear you all in. If you all can respond. Do you solemnly affirm that the testimony you are about to give in this hearing is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
Yes.
Yes. Thank you, everybody. You'll have 15 minutes. The floor is yours.
Okay. Well, thank you very much to the board. I just wanted to say that University Preparatory Charter School on 1290 Lake Avenue is an all-boys charter school, 7 through 12. It was established in 2009 and moved to the 1290 location in September of 2013. What Mr. Larkin, the CEO, and myself, the Chief Operating Officer, have only been there since March of 2019. And we have come into a school that needed a lot of different things, and part of that was storage. We severely lack in storage and space within our buildings. And we had a temporary structure or a pod in our backyard, and that we said, why don't we make this a career and technical education program, which is one of our pathways is construction, and have our students just replace the temporary structure with another temporary structure that they can learn to build. I think the original oversight when we first came on to try to do the project was to build something similar in size to the temporary structure of the pod. And as a result, we didn't realize that we had to go through the zoning board, and we apologize sincerely for that. And we have tried to amend that. We have also tried to reach out to the Maplewood Avenue Association We were given a name by the city of Rochester itself. I tried to contact the person as well as email the person multiple times. The phone number was disconnected and then did not receive a response back to try to work with the Maplewood Avenue Association so that they had an understanding. And we wanted to meet them as a new administration also because we wanted to extend the neighborhood respect to them as new administration to the school. So that's where it is. I'm going to turn it over to Corey Bogart and he can talk a little bit about the actual project in the back.
Good evening. So I am the construction instructor or teacher for the CTE at UPrep. I've been at UPrep for 5 years now. I started teaching science, and then when the CTE opened, I was able to transfer my skills from my own life into instructing skilled trades there. This project was a need of the school, and it was also a great benefit for the students in my class. They were able to work through all of the skills that they need to construct a structure such as this, all the while benefiting their school. The storage unit is for athletic equipment. Many of my students are on various athletic teams, so they were proud to leave something behind at school that could be useful to their teammates and future athletes and future students. We built the structure in a way that it is temporary. It can be removed from the site, and we built it in a location that we believe was the least intrusive on the neighborhood. The structure was built with 14 students in my class from September to November of 2019.
We also want to just add that the structure was not built on a parking space. It was actually built where the existing trash cans were, and we just moved them over to the side. Am I saying that right, Corey?
Yes, absolutely. So one of the concerns was the lack of parking. And initially, when the location was selected, it was currently used for 2 of our dumpsters, and they were in a large temporary fenced enclosure. We reduced the size of the fenced enclosure and moved the location of the dumpsters just slightly to the west so that no parking area would be lost for the structure.
You all have about 10 minutes left. Did you have any more testimony to add?
Mr. Larkin or Ms. Harris, do you have anything else?
Good evening, everybody. What I'll say is that one thing Ms. Centron is right about, all of us besides Mr. Bogart started this year, and we are big on trying to build community within the neighborhood the school is in. And unfortunately, prior to the pandemic, we had all been meeting to try and set up some community service where our students would actually get out in the community and utilize the skills they learned in construction, machine, culinary, and IT to assist in our neighborhood.
I would just add that the project, as Ms. Centron stated, does afford us additional space for the storage of the sports equipment and other items. But in addition, the employability skills and technical skills that our students are gaining in projects such as this make them be able to add to their resumes, both soft and technical skills, and add to employability. And many of our students in previous internships, apprenticeships have even worked at the city, and we look forward to continue building and even enhancing the community around Maplewood and with such young men with such talented and technical skills.
Okay. Fantastic. Thank you all. And we do appreciate all the testimony you added about the school. I think a lot of folks are familiar with the school and its reputation, and we appreciate all that you're doing with the young men in our community. So I'm going to open it up to the board for questions, and I'll start with Jim.
Good evening. Let me start first by mentioning a couple of things about the lack of communication between the neighborhood association and, of course, your school, your group there. I think you said, Ms. Intron, that you tried to call a number, it was a debt number and things like that. By all means, you should contact the Maplewood Neighborhood Association on their website. Even if you can't reach them by phone, you will get a response. I also found out when I looked at some of the letters of opposition, there's another group out there that even though I live 3 blocks away from this spot, that there is another organization out there, I think it's called the Neighborhood Block Association or something like that. People's names and phone numbers are on that letter, so I think you should contact them ongoing, because this is pretty important. You've got a beautiful piece of property there, and of course you do have a problem. The problem is that you have 3 front yards, so hence some of the zoning problems. Now, Mr. Bogart, you did a good job building that. I mean, it's a lot better than anything I could ever come up with. And I'm really surprised, but for all 4 of you, or maybe people that are on site all the time, I've been there 3 times, twice in March and once a couple of days ago. I never did see the Zoning Board of Appeals sign on display. Was there one, or did I simply miss it?
There was definitely one posted. I'm not sure if it has been blown away, but there, as soon as we received it, we had posted it.
Jim, Jim, when I was on site, I did see it. It was nailed to the back of the structure. So unless you went to the back and walked on the curb, you couldn't see it. But it was on the structure in the back of it. I was out there yesterday.
Thank you. Let me see if I have anything else for you.
Okay.
Oh yeah, we spoke about this briefly in our 5 o'clock meeting. You mentioned the word temporary has been used quite a few times. I tried to get that defined. It actually was defined by our people, not our board members, but the people that are in charge of this. And I don't like that word temporary, because the way I understand it, temporary means there should be an end date. I don't know if you're planning on taking this down and putting it up as training exercises, but, and also the pod out there, it's a temporary pod. Is that going to be there for an awful long time, or do you have any plans for that?
So once and if this has been approved, the pod will go away.
Okay.
The pod will go away, and we are looking at other options for our structure. We just have to go through the research process and get to a point where we all agree on what of those projects we would like to submit forward. But it is a temporary structure in the sense that it's not going to stay there forever. This is a very temporary solution to the pod problem, which was taking up space, and it looked horrible, and it didn't give us an opportunity to really teach our young men. So we saw it as a solution, and we thought because it was a temporary structure and not much bigger than the pod, that we were remiss in not following the process, and we understand that. So we're trying to remedy that now.
Okay, thank you, Ms. Sunshine, and actually all 4 of you. I appreciate it.
Thank you, Jim. LaShawna?
Hi, I think my line of questioning is going to definitely mirror my colleague Jim's. The first thing is in relation to the contact information for some of the community organizations. Can you tell me exactly how long have you guys been over there on Lake Avenue?
The school was moved September of 2013. Walter, myself, and Miss Harris are all new additions to the school. So I started in March of 2019. Mr. Larkin started in April of 2019, and Miss Harris started in August of 2019.
Okay, and the only reason I ask is because I would have assumed that some type of partnership would already have been existing with the neighborhood association.
Unfortunately, I'm sorry. Unfortunately, that information was not left for us when we arrived.
And I know that they've been meeting on the first Wednesdays of every month since before you guys even existed. So that's the reason I ask. The next question, and the reason I ask that is just because one of the things you always want to get is community support. And so I know you started talking about other options that you guys are considering. And so I guess my question would be along the lines of, do you have a sense of time of how long, you guys are expecting this temporary structure to remain there? And the reason I'm asking again has to do with your neighbors. That's a residential area. And so I'm pretty sure they're, one of the things is they're not going to want to keep seeing is these temporary structures going up and down. So I kind of want to see if you have, put some thought behind what you would like to see there.
So I can speak to that. I guess one thing, and the community involvement is absolutely a must for all of us moving forward. So I think what we would like to do is when we as a team can agree and have presented it to our board of ideas on how to remove this temporary structure and put something else in place that will rectify some of our storage situations, what we would like to do is have the community actually come visit our school, meet with the community stakeholders and give them a sense of what it is we are trying to do, and then get their input before we even bring it to anything else. I would imagine, I don't know that I can tell you a definitive time, but I imagine that is definitely one of our priorities for the upcoming school year. So the 2021 school year. I don't know if anybody else has anything else to add, Corey or Walter or Tracy.
Because one of the questions is, are there any other feasible options that the applicant can pursue outside of the variance? And so I'm just trying to think of other things that you may have considered that may not require a temporary structure, because it sounds like you guys will definitely be looking at something else, and this is not staying, similar to how you've got the pod situation where that's been there for quite some time. And now that's leaving. And so, so that's where my line of question is coming from. And maybe you don't have the answers today, and that's okay too. I just wanted to kind of see what, the administration was thinking as far as going with this temporary solution again. But thank you so much for your time.
Thank you. I think we just have, we house over 400 students, and our building is, it's been a space issue, and that's what we realized as soon as we got here. So we are filled to capacity. So we struggle with, and we're a popular school in the city, and we have a lot of sports programs. So our struggle has been to find, space to do anything in the building. We would even like to do more with our CTE, but we're limited with the space we have. So a bigger picture for us would be, yes, we would love to build, somewhere else that could accommodate the young men, because we don't even have an auditorium in this building. So it's like more of an elementary school, but we're with high school 7th through 12th. So it's a struggle. So we don't really have any answers right now, because most of us came on in 2019, but I can tell you it is a priority, and we're looking at it on a regular basis. The pandemic unfortunately kind of slowed everything down when we weren't able to meet and do things. It'd be a lot of Zoom meetings, but Ms. Cintron is right. As the year gets back moving, that is one of our main priorities, is to how can we fix this.
Thank you, Lashana. David.
No questions.
Thanks, David. Lorraine?
Hi, yes, I think my concerns would be what was previously stated, and that was the temporary situation, and then getting rid of the current pod. So maybe putting some time on your temporary and the pod removal. Those are mine as well. But thank you.
Thank you. Cora?
My questions have pretty much been covered. I did have one though. I thought I heard the word portable, and I know you guys, well, I know the kids built the pod, which is, or not the pod, but the structure, which is awesome. And I'm wondering, was it constructed, was the classroom in that parking lot, was it constructed outside? It's so congested back there. I'm just trying to imagine if it was built somewhere else and then constructed out here, or did the whole project take place outside?
The entire project took place right there as you see it. The location of the pod was there along with my vehicle to kind of block, blockade the students in working, so they were nowhere near, other teachers' vehicles, things like that. Work site safety is a big thing. It's a early unit in my class, so they're all aware of what they needed to do. They observed work site safety the entire time, and they constructed the entirety of that building in that location.
Okay, thank you very much. I think that's all.
Joe?
Nope, all set.
Okay, so it's my turn. Matt, I have a question for you, because it seems like I think a lot of board members have raised multiple questions about the structure, and I think the applicants have discussed how the structure is temporary, and what I don't want us to do as a board is to hinder them from this great experience of construction, and hopefully Corey, you got to teach them about permits before you start constructing. That's the most important thing.
Yes, I do.
Permit process. That's what I do for a living, so I know. But is there any way that the city, Matt, could issue some type of special use permit that if they decide to build a temporary structure for a class, even it may be a shed, it may be, I don't know what it could be. It doesn't have to be a shed always, but it can be a different structure. Is there any mechanism that the zoning department has where they could potentially build structures? Because I know, for example, if you go out to, I don't know if any, Edison comes to mind, or suburban schools who, can go out and build things. What's really that process, or what can the school and the administration take to offer this potential class and offering to the students? But the issue is a variance that will be with the life, but and I'll just say this, the applicants obviously can say that it's temporary, and this is no shot at the applicants. I'm just trying to drive an example. But we could grant this application, and this structure can stay up for as long as you want, because it goes with the life of this variance will go with the life of this property, no matter if you stay here or the next property owner. So I guess that's the concern I think I'm hearing from the board members. So Matt, I know that was a mouthful. So
yeah. You gave me a lot to answer. No, it's a good question. So as we had talked about in the pre-meeting a little bit, the zoning code has temporary uses and temporary structures. The temporary storage structure section of the zoning code, though, is completely reliant on the need for them being directly related to either damage or destruction, a temporary construction project, and temporary means it's defined in our code as, you're putting up a building, you're doing something specific, and then it's coming down and it's never coming back. So, we don't have that ability that to answer that question. We don't have that ability. The applicants are certainly in a tight spot, no pun intended, with them saying they have space issues, but they are in a residential district. They do have the 3 front yards, as the board mentioned. The applicants also reached out to, reported that they reached out to the Maplewood neighborhood organization without any success. But yet we do have a slew of public comments. So, it's obviously at the board's discretion. You may want to discuss with the applicant potentially just pushing pause, maybe holding it for the moment, seeing if they can reach out directly to the neighbors. Maybe they can get some more concrete information on temporary, and then our office can certainly also work with them and chat with our law department about potential options. I know several board members at this point have referenced the public comment, which I have not read into the record yet, but I will be doing so. So maybe it's an option to discuss with the applicants if it's an acceptable solution at the moment to hold to hold the application to discuss those 3 areas. But that might be something you want to check with.
Yeah, so what I'll say to the applicants specifically, I think it would be a really good idea to consider, because what you have explained to me, where I understand the issue where, do we want the structure up there forever? Because it potentially could stay there forever, but this opportunity for the young men to learn such an important trade, I believe that a lot of young men of color don't get. And I think if you explain it to the community members, it may be beneficial and they would understand the process and that, it's educational. So I would just, if you're open to it, and I know the class isn't going to continue anyway because school isn't resuming for the rest of the academic year. So it may be an opportunity to maybe hold a meeting later this summer when open meetings are allowed again. To consider holding this for a bit. So that's a suggestion. And I just wanted to poll you all and see if that's if you all would consider that before we do, because once we deliberate, you can't say what you want to do.
We're willing to do what's necessary. Again, we want the opportunity to speak with those in the neighborhood and explain exactly what you were just talking about. And you touched on it. Before UPrep, I was the principal at Edison, and we did build temporary structures, but it was right on our campus and we donated them. So those are ideas that we do want to do. So you were saying everything that we're looking to go, but again, it's a space issue from where we're at and where Edison is at, but we're more than willing to sit with community members because that's our goal. Part of our school is community. So we're trying to build upon that. So we're willing to do what we have to and what's needed.
Okay, great. It's good to hear that. I'll go ahead and let Matt read the public testimony into the record.
Yes, I will do that. The public testimony. So this is the written comment for case number 3, which is file V-047-1920, 1290 Lake Avenue for the May 7th, 2020 zoning board hearing. All written comments were due May 6th, 2020, 5 p.m. for inclusion into the record. I will read all written comments received for this project since the publication of the staff report. All other written comments can be found in the staff report, and I believe the only comments are the ones I'm going to read actually. And also please note that these comments have been provided to the board members in advance of this hearing. The first public comment is from Joanne Beck of 30 Seneca Parkway. To the members of the Zoning Board of Appeals, I am writing as the owner of the property directly across Maplewood Avenue from UPrep Charter School for young men about their application to legalize construction of a garage in the front yard of Maplewood Avenue. I request that you deny the variance for the following reasons. Number 1, the property is within the Maplewood National Register Historic District, and the garage contributes in no way to the character of the district. The historic district benefits everyone, the school, the residents, and the city as a whole, and should give more weight to the application zoning regulation 120-163. The garage is characterized as a temporary structure and as such should not receive approval that could be constructed as permanent or a precedent for any such structures. From observation of the construction process, it appears to have been a student project assumed to be an academic exercise associated with the school's vocational program. If so, my request to deny the request is in no reflection on the effort of the students, the value of the vocational program, or the work of the school, all of which are laudable. It is hope for the school to be a model good neighbor and possibly, if they haven't done so, to incorporate material on the value of codes and regulations in the construction curriculum. A second piece of public comment is from Ann M. Bove Janice, to whom it may concern. I am, excuse me, I did not say the address, 475 Maplewood Avenue. To whom it may concern, I am writing to you to include my thoughts regarding the variance request from UPrep Charter School. I understand there was going to be a hush meeting prior to this pandemic, which I think was very underhanded by the city. As a resident of Maplewood Avenue, we as neighbors have tried to have a peaceful coexistence with a commercial property in the middle of a very quiet residential street. The so-called temporary shed went up very quickly without a permit/variance. The negative impacts, number 1, blocks the street view of the immediate neighbor. Number 2, takes up parking spaces, which has been an ongoing problematic issue. Number 3, most likely will not be temporary. Number 4, there is ample space on Lake Avenue for this structure. Number 5, if this is allowed, what further structures will the school feel they can just freely add? There have been many issues with the school that we have addressed. Garbage on the lawns, staff and students taking up all the street parking, dangerously blocking the intersections at arrival dismissal times, and so on. As I do appreciate having the school in our neighborhood, going ahead and just building this garage adds to the frustration that I had hoped we were working through. Next piece of public comment is from Chris Kingsley of 376 Maplewood Avenue to the Rochester Zoning Board about UPrep variance request at 1290 Lake Avenue. I believe this variance request should be disapproved because the matter of UPrep's attempt at property management gave no consideration to the surrounding residential neighborhood. There is more than a shed involved with UPrep's request as their collusion with the city to magically turn an illegal activity into a legal one without further in-depth review. Regarding the shed itself, it is obvious that no consideration was given to its appearance. In no way was an attempt made to blend in with the historical buildings that UPrep owns. Pseudo brickwork and stucco siding is a veil that would be greatly enhance this shed's non-conforming clapboard siding. Also, the exposed subfloor beams at grade are an eyesore that could be hidden by proper berming or landscaping, which I don't believe they intend to do, as no mention of it is included in the variance form. This variance request states that UPrep's problem was not self-created. I argue to the contrary because the UPrep campus for about 2 years now does have a backyard at 1302 Lake Ave and about 50 feet from where their new shed is. Is there an insurmountable hardship for the school to place their storage structure in their own backyard? If so, it should be included in this variance application, which it does not. I also ask if a shed is necessary at all. They already have a garage and a huge gym. By installing a loft for storage in those structures, couldn't that serve their purpose? Exactly what is UPrep storing that wouldn't fit in their existing buildings? Since we all now know that 1290 Lake Ave has 3 front yards, I contend that their existing pod that is in their parking lot has been an eyesore for years and is just as illegal as their construction of their new shed. UPrep states under A, benefits, the temporary storage is not much bigger than the temporary pod structure. I think that is a false statement. I estimate the new shed as more than twice as big as the pod. The board should only accept actual measurements and should not accept falsehoods. I also point out that parking issues are involved here. More and larger structures deplete originally approved parking spaces and the overflow ends up on the streets of a residential area. This makes the residential area look less desirable. I have demonstrated that not enough factual information is included in UPrep's variance request for the zoning board to make a wise or valid decision at this time. At the very least, I suggest the zoning board ask UPrep to resubmit their variance application to include answers to the questions and issues I have raised. This delay, if granted, will put no hardship on the students because the school is closed and there is now time to do some planning that actually benefits both the school and its residential surroundings. Again, that statement was from Chris Kingsley of 376 Maplewood Ave. The next public comment is from the Maplewood Neighborhood Organization. Dear Sirs, regarding ZBA case number V-047-1920, the Maplewood Neighborhood Association opposes the granting of the proposed variance for the following reasons. The placement of a shed as a front yard structure on Maplewood Avenue is detrimental to the property values of the other homeowners on the street. No other homeowner on the street would likely be granted a variance for a front yard shed. This street is part of the Maplewood Historic District, and both the city and the state have an interest in preserving the appearance of this street. While the application calls the shed temporary, it is fully framed out structure and no time limit on its occupancy of that space is given in the application. While the pod storage is replacing what would have been rented and therefore temporary by nature, this structure seems to be permanent in design and construction. This is a substantial change in the neighborhood. The application states no time limit for its existence or date for its demolition. The student labor was used to construct it should have no bearing on the granting of a variance. If the class had built a front yard shed on another property, that property owner would not be entitled to a variance. In this case, the applicant may have passed up an opportunity for a learning experience for its construction students by neglecting to educate them on the necessary permitting requirements for building structures in the city. That the structure was built prior to the application shows disregard by the city code by the applicant. The applicant is not a homeowner who is unfamiliar with the city code, but is a substantial for-profit business with retained legal representation. Granting of a variance retroactively would be a bad example for future similar applicants. By its own admission, in Section A of the Statement of Difficulty, the new structure is not much larger than the temporary pod it was renting. Therefore, the benefit to the applicant seems very small compared to the damage to neighboring property owners of having a front yard shed on their street. Contrary to section C of that statement, there appear to be multiple remedies to the applicant's storage issue that could be pursued, including continuing to use a temporary pod, internal storage, off-site storage, rental, or constructing an addition to one of the existing buildings. While the current application call the shed temporary, we fear that granting a full variance would make this permanent and encourage the applicants to build additional outbuildings. They would have little incentive to do otherwise. Thank you for your attention to our concerns. Sincerely, Bill Collins, Vice President of Maplewood Neighborhood Organization and members of the MNA Board. And again, that letter was from the Maplewood Neighborhood Organization. Next letter is from Kevin McTighe of 360 Maplewood Avenue. Dear board members, I would like to register my opposition to the proposed variance for a structure at 1290 Lake Avenue, UPREP. My concerns are similar to others expressed by members of Maplewood Avenue Block Association regarding the parking situation in our neighborhood, the appearance of the structure as it relates to a historic neighborhood, and most especially the precedent that an approval for a front yard structure of this type would set in the area. However, perhaps a more enduring problem, at least in my opinion, has been the lack of communication between the school and the surrounding neighborhood. I think both sides can share some responsibility for that, but I can't help feeling like we wouldn't be going through this process now if we'd had contact with each other prior to this point. The feeling of frustration many of our members articulate stems, I think, from the sense that things happen in our neighborhood that affect our quality of life, yet we have no forum for our point of view. Being a good neighbor is a two-way street, though it has no bearing on the issue at hand. I'd like to suggest that UPREP and the Maplewood Avenue Block Association create a liaison team whose purpose would be to work together in the future to address concerns of mutual interest. In the past, we have had such an arrangement, and though it was no guarantee that we would agree on everything, it was a road that led to understanding. Our email is map365@gmx.com, and we would welcome a dialogue with the school. That said, if the proposed variance is granted, I ask that it be considered an exception, as the term variance applies and not a precedent for similar structures in the future, whether they be at UPREP or any other location in our neighborhood. I would also ask, as others have done, that there be a clarification of the word temporary used in the application. I believe there should be an agreed upon date at which point the variance, if granted, would expire. And I would also like to understand why it is temporary. Is there some other construction project that will eliminate the need for this storage area? Thank you for your time. Kevin McTighe, 360 Maplewood Avenue. Lastly, case number 3, Eileen Thomas of 171 Maplewood Avenue. As a resident of Maplewood Avenue and a member of Maplewood Avenue Block Association, I wish to add my voice to that of my neighbors regarding the proposed variance for a structure at 1290 Lake Avenue. I look at this structure every day on my walk to and from work, and as I travel through the neighborhood on errands. As others have stated, the appearance of the prefab shed in the parking lot of the school has a grossly negative impact on the Maplewood Historic District in which the school is located. There is also the matter of the temporary shed being front yard structure and having exposed subfloor beams. Further, the shed is of large enough size that its construction required a permit. Was a permit issued, or was the shed built without bothering about the niceties of complying with the rules everyone else has to follow? The negative impacts of this structure include blocking the street view of the immediate next door neighbor, taking up multiple parking spaces in an already small lot, and exposed Tyvek wrap visible from several directions. If this is allowed, what further structures will the school feel they can just freely add without regard to city requirements? The variance request states that UPREP's problem was not self-created. This is not true. UPREP has owned the adjacent 1302 Lake Avenue for several years. This property has an ample backyard that could easily house a storage structure. Is there a reason why the storage shed was not placed in that space? There is also a question of whether the shed is necessary at all, since there is already a large garage at 1302 Lake Avenue at the back of the property. There is not enough accurate information in UPREP's request to the zoning board for the commissioners to make a wise or valid decision. At the very least, the zoning board should ask UPREP to revise their variance application to address these issues. They should also be required to actually secure neighborhood input, which they have not done. Again, that final letter there was from Eileen Thomas of 171 Maplewood Avenue, and my apologies to all for not keeping up on the screen, but they are there now, and that concludes the public testimony.
Matt, before you conclude, can I ask one more question?
To me? Sure.
No, to the applicant.
Oh, absolutely, yeah. So the you can certainly ask more questions, and of course the applicant is afforded the 5-minute rebuttal period as well.
Just my last question was, how long has the pod structure been there?
Before we came on, I'm not sure the answer to that question. Corey, would you happen to know?
At least since 2017, there was actually a Verdi, a larger structure there prior to that. which was exchanged for the pod.
Thank you.
So you guys will have 5 minutes to for a 5-minute rebuttal. So if you want to use it, you can. If you don't, it's up to you. But you'll have 5 minutes if you would like.
Sure, just a couple of things that I think I'd already mentioned. One is that we are a 401c3. We are not a for-profit organization. And our funding comes from our educational, our service of our students. Two, the structure that we have placed is not taking up any parking spaces. Actually, it alleviates some more space in the back parking lot. Three, 1302 does not have a backyard, if I'm correct, Corey. You can speak to that. And I'll let Corey take away some of the other specific structural things.
Okay, as far as structure and appearance, there's a number of concerns. The first one being the use of clapboard siding, which is very common all along Maple Ave. The directly adjacent neighbor has clapboard siding that was just added in 2019. It's the same exact size, a 4-inch clapboard. Ours is a color that closely resembles the gymnasium directly behind it to help it further conform to the neighborhood. The concern of exposed beams was mentioned multiple times. The beams that are exposed for the building will be covered. That was not, students were not able to complete that before the project was halted. There are spatial concerns. Suki already spoke to that. Its location was selected to have the absolute least impact. On the parking concern, the 1302 property, the entire backyard of that property is a parking lot, and there is no acceptable location for this structure in that area. You know, it's an issue being that it is located in one of our 3 front yards. Again, this front yard is directly opposite of Lake Ave, making it, you know, logically a backyard, which is, you know, difficult. See, the structure was built to resemble the homes in the area. Again, it has asphalt single roof. It has clapboard siding. Again, it does have exposed tieback currently, but will be completed with the, you know, upon approval, will be completed with the clapboard siding and the appropriate trim to have it appear just as any other structure in the neighborhood.
I also just want to add one more thing, which is I just wanted to be on record. I actually tried to reach out to the neighborhood Maplewood Ave Association prior to meeting Matthew Simonis, and I actually asked him if he had a contact information for it. He sent that over to me a long time ago in January, and I emailed and contacted Mr. Wayne Williams from the Maple Neighborhood Association. I was given a phone number that was disconnected, and I have an email dated January 15th to try to reach out. And I think I tried their Facebook, which hasn't been updated since 2017. So I just wanted to put that into record. That's all.
Hey, thank you. I appreciate it. They definitely found you all though. So I think I think you guys have some work to do for sure. So I think we're in agreement. You guys are going to hold this application until you're able to have some public feedback. Is that what you all want to do?
Yes, we can do that again. We just want to do whatever we can to ensure that we're doing right by our students. And
I agree. Because I don't, with the read of the board right now, I don't know if you'll get the votes you need to be successful tonight with just seeing the questions that they've asked tonight. So Matt, we're just going to hold this case.
Yeah, so you can vote to do that during deliberations.
Okay, great. Okay, we'll
You've
close.
discussed it with the applicant.
Okay, fantastic. We'll close case number 3. I want to thank you all. I know the struggle that you all are having as new leadership there. So I appreciate all that you're doing. I know it wasn't the best or easiest transition. So thank you. We'll move to case number 4.
Sure. So we're going to get started with case number 4. And like the other cases, I will introduce it and then we will go through the site visits, and then the chair will swear in the applicant or applicants that are here. Case number 4 is file number V-048-1920. It's an area variance request at 72 Hickory Street, located in the R2 medium density residential district. The applicant is Shannon Sadiq, and the purpose on the agenda reads to legalize the removal of a front porch and the installation of a deck in front of an existing 2-family dwelling, not meeting the location requirements for attached accessory structures. Before we get to the site visits, I just want to offer, and we discussed this during the pre-meeting, the code section and the zoning district and the applicant and address are correct. But the request is to legalize the removal of a porch and the construction of a deck in its place, not meeting the location requirements, because a deck is required to be in the side and the rear yard. And so I'm clarifying the language surrounding the front yard, which is listed in the project description of the staff report. Case number 4, in terms of board members, 5 board members visited the site. Lashana Boos and David Carr did not visit the site.
Okay, who do we have with us today for case number 4?
Okay, great. Can you hear me now?
I see her there.
Yes,
Yep. Yes, we can.
Yes.
How many-
Okay, great. I couldn't get the audio on my computer to work, so I'm on both.
Okay. Are you going to be speaking just you, Shannon?
Yes, just me.
Okay, let me swear you in. Do you solemnly affirm that the testimony you are about to give in this hearing is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
Yes, I do.
Okay, you'll have 15 minutes. Go ahead.
Okay. I just wanted to start off by thanking you all for listening to me, and I'm going to introduce myself. My husband and I moved here from Phoenix, Arizona 6 years ago, and out of all the places in Rochester and the surrounding suburbs, with our family living in Brighton and Penfield, we chose to buy our first home in the South Wedge, just 2 blocks away from the house that we're discussing. We love the diversity of the South Wedge and the architecture it provides, the walkability and camaraderie of the neighbors. We helped run a co-op garden on our street. We participated in the yearly Thanksgiving Wedge Waddle. We buy clothes and food at the shops on South Ave and Clinton, and regularly went to the summer concerts hosted by Lux every year. Park Ave is really fun, but the Wedge holds a special place in our heart. So when I found out that a few homes in the South Wedge were up for sale at the city tax sale in November, I was very hopeful to get one. My husband and I are just small-time investors. We love HGTV, basically, and opportunities like this rarely come up. So before the auction, we drove by and talked to the neighbor next door. She told us it had been vacant and was in rough shape, but had a newer roof. We peeked inside, because I don't know if you're familiar with auction homes, but you're not allowed to look inside legally. So we, looked through the windows, and actually the door was wide open, so you could peek inside. And we saw a lot of water damage, but since the neighbor had told us the roof was newer, we assumed the damage was old. So we estimated repairs around $40,000, $50,000 max. We bid on the house and were able to purchase it for $69,000 with $35,000 in back taxes. So it had been vacant for a really long time. Right after the auction was over, a fellow next to me, sitting right next to me, confided that he was part of Rochester Renovation, a huge company of investors that regularly flips homes. And he said they'd actually purchased the same house at the tax sale last year, but they thought it needed too much work, so they ended up walking away from their deposit and let it sit for another year, accruing taxes and being a blight in the neighborhood. Well, now I was really worried, because if they didn't want it, what was I going to do? And again, I hadn't seen all the details inside. So I won't go into all the details of the poor condition of this house, but the damage was far greater than anyone could have seen or known, with damage even inside the walls and the foundation. And unfortunately, the roof had not been replaced. It was completely shot. A friend of mine offered to advertise it to his contact list of 500 investors in town to see if we could wholesale it. But everyone said it needed far too much work, and we realized we were stuck. I couldn't believe how many people had said, oh yeah, I heard about that one last year when the guys tried to sell it to me. Good luck with that. No one wanted to take it on. And if we let it go, we would lose our $7,000 deposit. And the house would just continue to sit vacant again for whoever knows how long. So we decided to just get really smart about it, shop around, buy used appliances or whatever we can where we could, and try to do as much of the work ourselves as possible. The house had been vacant for many years with severe neglect before that. All the doors had been kicked in, so the door and frame to the area in question were completely unusable. If you look at the pictures that I submitted under the section marked previous conditions on page 12 through 16, you will see the covered area had a leaking, deteriorated roof, which over the years had caused the ceiling, walls, and flooring to mold and rot. Some of the pictures show inside the drywall where you can make out the wood framing. It was completely rotted and soft. And just behind the drywall, there was wiring that was not properly installed, which was also a safety hazard. In the first picture on page 12, you can see that there was an illegal door upstairs on the second story leading to an illegal balcony. It was literally just a few pallets on top with no railing. I mean, it was all just completely unsafe, and there was not one salvageable part of the porch from the inside out other than the flooring. Someone commented, and later you'll hear this in the feedback, that we should have known beforehand that the code does not allow for what is now being considered installation of a deck. And we feel it's important to address this. First, there are thousands and thousands of codes. And second, we did do our homework. We are familiar with the code compliance required for rental properties. This is not our first. And we also have done renovations before and read through documentation on what generally requires a permit and have applied for and completed several permits on this house. So it is plausible that one can have good intentions, but simply not know every single code. But honestly, the codes can be pretty confusing and at times open to interpretation. Matt and I have gone back and forth on this, but for example, code 120.163A2 states that attached decks are permitted inside yards. And code 120-208 defines the front and side yard, with the front yard being the depth of which shall be the least distance between the front lot line at the street and the front of the main front building line. So if you look at the pictures we provided of the finished product, and even the survey map, maybe you can just bump forward, you can see that the deck is completely behind the front building line. And according to the code, this means it is technically in the side yard.
I'm going to stop the applicant for a moment. What you're describing is an interpretation of the code. Our office is more than happy to work with you on an interpretation if you want to hold this application. That is well within your rights if you would like to request a hold. Otherwise, you're here not for defining the yard or interpreting the code, but for the request that was originally read.
Okay.
You are welcome to request a hold if you'd like to request an interpretation from the manager of zoning. That is well within your rights if you choose to do that.
I'm not sure. I'm really new to all of this, so I don't.
Sure. So
I'm not exactly sure, but I don't.
Well, what that would look like, I can tell you what it would look like so you know. So currently the legal authority lies with the zoning board for this application, and their authority lies with approving with lesser relief, approving on condition, or denying based on the request that was originally read into the record. If you feel there was a misapplication of the code, or you would like further clarification on how this office arrived at that description, you are certainly welcome to request that through an interpretation. But because the board currently has the legal authority, what you would do is just request a hold on this right now so that our office could work with you on that interpretation and sorting through the location that you're describing. So that is an option for you if you choose to do that.
Okay. I guess I'm not sure what to do.
Well, if you hold it, so the board will have the authority to make a decision on it, and the board's authority would be to either approve as submitted, deny as submitted, approve on condition that they put some other condition on it, or approve with lesser relief, which would be getting something in between what you came for and what and a denial, basically. So it would put the application on hold, and you would be able to work with the Division of Zoning on an interpretation and sorting out those, basically what you're describing just now about yard location and things of that nature.
And Matt, if I can jump in for a second for the
Sure.
applicant, what I would suggest for the applicant is to finish your testimony and to hear the questions from all the board members and to hear the public comment. You don't have to make a decision right now, but I would finish your testimony, hear the board out and get a feel of what the board is feeling, hear that public comment, and then make a decision after that if you still want to hold before we close the case.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, I know that Matt and I have emailed back and forth about this. He did not consider that as installation of a deck. They considered it something else. So I guess that was kind of my point of all of this, was to say that, we thought we were reading the code to what we thought was correct. We thought what we were doing was legal, basically, according to what we were reading. So there was also another code that we read that sort of motivated our actions that said in code 120-160A2, it only speaks to no open porch can be removed unless the original design of the building lacked such a porch. So first, this wasn't an open porch and it was an enclosed porch. And second, we don't really know if this was original or not. Unfortunately, it's very old and we don't have pure fact of that. I mean, I know Matt has some maps of it or whatever, but we don't even know if it was a porch at all. It was really kind of a strange little room that could have been anything. And I had some doubts about it being original because it had a flat roof, which you saw the pallet balcony. That isn't consistent with original architecture of that period. So
yeah, I'm gonna speak to the applicant. What you're describing is something that needs to be sorted out with the Division of Zoning. To the chair's point about hearing the rest of the testimony, this isn't testimony for the application. She's describing basically an interpretation and working through how the code is being applied, and that's not something that the zoning board has the authority in this instance to deal with. If it's acceptable to the applicant, what you would do now is request a hold. And as I said earlier, we're more than happy to work with you on that. Our office would reach out to you to work with you on exactly what you're describing. Original architecture, was it a porch? Was it not a porch? Yard definitions and things of that nature. All of those items need to be sorted out prior to an application going to the zoning board, because the zoning board is not making a determination if the manager of zoning applied the code correctly. There's a process for that, but this is not it. And we're happy to work with you on that process, and we can do that with the hold of this application.
Okay, I'm sorry, because I thought we emailed about this yesterday, and then you guys said that you didn't consider the deck to be in the quote yard, and so you said I needed to just go ahead with the meeting today, and then the board would decide.
Well, so what that means is this: the board would have to decide not if the code was applied correctly. The board would be making a decision based on the request that was made. But what you're describing now, which was not discussed up until just the past 24 hours, was the interpretation of the code, how the code was applied, if you will. None of that was discussed previously. So that coming out now in testimony, this is not the process for that. There is a process for it, and we're happy to work with you on it. It would just need to be done not in this forum.
Okay.
Okay, so we're happy to work with you on that. So let's hold the case. The board members can hold the case right now, and then we will, this office will work with you on the interpretation and the application of the zoning code. There is a process for that, and we can do that.
Okay.
Okay, yeah, two very different things, two different processes. And the importance of it is who has the legal authority to do what and how. And so we need to make sure we do that on the proper course. So we would hold the application.
Okay, I just don't really, this made me so nervous. I've been nervous for days, and I don't, it seemed in the email yesterday that you guys did not agree with me on my interpretation of the code. I just
right,
don't
so we would
wanna
discuss that
go
not
back
at the
to
zoning
that.
board hearing. Right, so if you're either, so if you want to discuss that, it's not done at this hearing. The board doesn't have the authority with this application, this particular application. They don't have the authority for this application to determine whether or not the code was applied properly. There is a process for that, but it's not this.
Okay.
Okay, so we'll work with you on
Would it be okay if
that.
I was to speak to some other things and at least get the board's opinions and questions?
You can. I caution you though, because your presentation has not been testimony for the application. The presentation has been testimony for an interpretation and application of the zoning code. So they can't use that as testimony. You can't bring an application to the board that hasn't been sorted out on the application of the zoning code yet. It doesn't, as I said, there's a process for that, and we need to maintain the integrity of that process, and this is not that process right now.
Okay, I thought I was speaking to standard number 6, which is the alleged difficulty was not self-created. That's kind of what I thought I was speaking to when saying this is my thought process behind what we did.
Right, but that's not what the self-created hardship statement is. The self-created hardship, it does not speak to the application of the zoning code.
Okay.
Okay, yeah, let's definitely work together. We'll hold the application because what that does is it renders no decision, and we need to make sure we're following the correct process. So we'll get you linked with the manager of zoning to determine the correct path in the application of the zoning code.
Okay.
Okay.
Matt, Jim has his hand raised.
Okay. Jim?
Yeah, Matt, I mean, Tyrese mentioned before she could still continue, and we might not necessarily be talking about what you and she are talking about.
I was under the impression that maybe if she can get some more guidance from zoning, that it could save some time on the other cases that we have. I'm not sure what kind of additional feedback she would be looking for from us as far as the project goes. Maybe Tyrese can.
Let's just hold it as Matt suggested. So
I have to agree with Matt.
Let's just hold it.
I think we need to move on.
Well, what we need to do is we need to make sure we're following the correct process.
That's what I mean.
Yeah, so, okay. To the applicant, Shannon, we will, our office will be in touch with you to begin that process.
Okay, all right.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay. Thank you very much. Thanks, Matt, for that. Appreciate it.
I have a question for legal counsel. Should I present the public testimony at this time for this case, the stuff that came in since the publication of the staff report? She's on mute.
Sorry about that. I don't think that's necessary. The applicant has decided not to proceed with the variance application, and she's going to be pursuing an alternative remedy, which is the interpretation, the code interpretation. And depending on the outcome of that, she may not need a variance. So
that is correct, yes.
So I don't think there's any point if, in fact, it is determined that she does need an area variance. We have the information, we have the public comments, and we would have to schedule a new hearing and new public.
We're still part of the record.
Could be submitted, but we could retain the ones we've got.
Okay.
Okay.
Thank you. Okay, case number 5. Case number 5 is file. I'm gonna just scroll down to the correct screen here. Bear with me. Case number 5 is file number V-050-1920. The applicant is Eric Anderson of 155 Westminster Road, R2 Medium Density Residential District. The purpose is to reconfigure and increase the size of 2 existing dormers to facilitate the increase in floor area of the 3rd floor dwelling unit and expansion of a non-conforming use. And in terms of site visits from the board, all 7 zoning board members reported during the pre-meeting that they did visit this site.
Okay, great. Thank you, Matt. Eric, you and Randy both will be speaking?
Correct.
Okay,
Yes.
I'm gonna swear you both in. Do you solemnly confirm that the testimony you are about to give in this hearing is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do. Yes.
Okay, 15 minutes.
Well, good evening, everybody. Thank you so much for your time. First, I'd like to thank Matt Simonis and the Zoning Board of Appeals and all supporting staff for the time and energy that has obviously gone on to reinventing yourselves in how to do this job in the most challenging of circumstances that we never thought we would be in. So I think you've done a tremendous job of reorganizing and using technology so that we're actually safe, sound, and getting things moving along. So thank you very much for that. A couple quick things. Obviously, I put in a 74-page application, and I'm not going to sit here and read 74 pages to you and waste anybody's time. I just wanted to hit the points, and then I'm going to hand it over to Randy to hit the real integral architectural stuff, and hope we can get to questions and move it forward as fast as possible for all folks. First, we did an extensive amount of community outreach. This project, as you may have heard and we talked about, it seems like a year ago now, in the beginning when you guys were doing your pre-meeting, this is a legal 3rd floor, 2-bedroom apartment. It has been legalized via a certificate of nonconformity that happened last year. At that time, we had 2 people that were opposed to it, and we had several people that were in favor of it. We won that certificate of nonconformity, and in my community outreach and trying to reach and touch every neighbor that's surrounded in this property, I got to a lot of people before the pandemic hit. And I got to the 2 parties that were not in favor of our certificate of nonconformity. That would be Bill Towler at 160 Westminster Road and the Park Megs Association, both of whom we sat down, we gave them the layout of everything we wanted to go through, the drawings, everything, the reason for doing all of that. And I wanted to get their approvals of it because I felt a very large responsibility to talk to those people that were opposed to it in the beginning. And I wanted them to be in favor of it so that everybody's on the same page. Much to my happiness, Bill Towler, who lives across the street, who is a really great guy, has been my neighbor for a million years. We get along awesome. Used to own City Magazine. He's just a neat guy. And I sat down, he was nice enough to let me in the house. I laid out all the drawings. His office literally looks at this house from across the street. He is one of 2 single-family houses on this street, on Westminster Road, where this house sits. I got to both of those parties and got them both to see what we're doing, and they're both on board, and they both wrote approval letters, one being Janet and Peter Rich at 149 Westminster Road, the other being Mr. Towler. Also, Mark Seawick at 80 Westminster Road, he was in support of our certificate of nonconformity. He's in support of this as well. The Park Megs Association, which was not in support originally of us, came on board and supported this as well. My intent was to reach out to every one of the organizations. Thanks to Matt Simonis again. He gave me all of the neighborhood associations. I reached out to all of them. Park Megs was nice enough to offer me in. I came into their big meeting in March, right in the beginning of it, and I laid everything out for them. We got an approval. I didn't hear back from other associations, but I felt really great having the Park Megs Association on board where they weren't before. The reason we're asking for this is that we've already legalized the space. It is an approved 2-bedroom, 3rd floor apartment. We are not going to change the footprint of the structure whatsoever. We are not adding bedrooms. We are not adding occupants. We are asking for what we feel is a not significant amount of floor space that will be added onto this. Most of it will be over non-habitable space, stairwell, bathrooms, and from what we've got for feedback from the neighborhood and all of our neighbors was really great and humbling. They really loved our drawings. They thought we were going to make the neighborhood better. Mr. Tyler liked that we're going to drop the sight line of the roof and actually give him more sunlight on his side of the street. So we did a lot of work in that area. I don't want to belabor the point anymore. I'm going to toss it over to Randy so we can keep it moving.
Great. Can everybody hear me? Is this Eric?
Yes, we can hear you.
Great, thanks guys. I've had some previous problems with my Zoom and I was a little nervous about using this computer, but thanks. I think what, just as Eric had stated, we've established that this was a legal, this is a legal 3rd floor apartment. It was a pre-existing apartment. What Eric has asked to do is to make it a little more comfortable for someone to use. We're only expanding the apartment itself by 181 square feet. Right now, that apartment is 684 square feet. We're bumping that up to 865. That's a 4.9% increase in the area of the entire house, 27% increase in the area of the apartment. And for the most part, that increase is attributed to kitchen, toilet rooms, or toilet, bathroom, and mechanical space for the apartment, for a separate furnace for that upper level. The existing roof construction, which is very typical of this era of house, is very light. There are 2x6 rafters and a single 2x10 valley rafters. By eliminating what is now 2 side gables and creating a shed dormer across the back of the apartment, we're able to increase, or we're able to remove some of the structural deficiencies in that existing roof. The valley rafters are considerably undersized, and as is pretty typical, they show some cracking and deformation that's occurred through the years. But we also end up being able to increase the energy efficiency of the structure by going to a deeper roof structure and adding insulation to a much greater degree than we could do working within that existing structure. So those are the points I wanted to make most. It's really, as Eric has pretty much already stated, it's a 2-bedroom apartment now. It will be a 2-bedroom apartment. The bedrooms haven't changed considerably in size. We're adding a little bit more usable closet space, as is typical in these type of attic or garret apartments. The closets are tucked into corners and substantially undersized from, that's you can see the existing plan there. The closets are tucked under the gable or under the valleys, makes them not very usable. So the kitchen area will be a little bit larger in the new plan, and the bathroom area will also be a little bit larger and more usable. I think that pretty much covers the points that I wanted to make here.
Okay, did you guys have anything else to add? Hearing nothing, I will turn it over to the board for questions. I'll start with Jim.
I don't have any questions.
Lashana?
I don't have any questions.
David?
Yes, just several questions I just have, just simple. I want to know, I didn't see in the drawings or anywhere, the mechanicals for the heating system, mechanicals for this apartment, where are they located?
I can answer that. they're located in the mechanical room, which is right down near the bathroom across from the kitchen. Matt, if you could bring up the floor plan again.
Okay, that floor plan in front of me. I'm trying to find.
This one you're looking for, Randy?
No, that's the existing conditions. We're looking for the plan of the new construction floor plan.
Here it is. Oh, that's
Okay, I don't have that. I thought I had it. But I just give you some indication of where it will be located. All your mechanicals for your heat,
Right.
water.
You see there's a utility room there, right across from the kitchen on the plan that's on the screen right at the moment.
Will they be encased in?
That's an enclosed room. It'll be, full height room. That furnace will then go up into a main duct that runs down the ridge space above the ceiling and distributes into the spaces from above.
Okay, what about the fireproofing of the walls? Will you be doing that? For the
It's an existing apartment. There's no fireproofing necessary in the actual apartment itself. Because it's over an apartment below, the fire rating of the existing ceiling on the second floor is not being changed, and that was considered to be adequate to separate the two apartments at the time that when the house was built, so that can remain. And we are upgrading the fire rating of the stair enclosure so that the stair becomes a 1 hour wall with a 1 hour door on it. To protect that upper level from a little bit better than it is protected now.
We also did a chapter 15 analysis to improve the fire rating for the entire third floor structure and everything below it. And all the requirements were met for a chapter 14 as Randy applied with already.
Yeah, I could explain a little further on that as well. I couldn't, under the building code with the commercial building code, this is a 3-family, so it falls under the commercial building code. I can't just simply expand a third floor in a wood frame structure. The way that the path to compliance that was used here is called Chapter 14 in the existing building code. What that does is it uses I think it's a 23 factor evaluation, assigning positive and negative points to the structure. You have to come out with a certain score that exceeds the minimum. Some of the things that we're adding to this to obtain that score is an integrated fire alarm system throughout the house. So with pull stations. So the fire safety of the entire structure gets increased by the work that we're doing here because of the additional fire safety items that we have to add to the structure to be in compliance with that Chapter 14 evaluation.
Okay, thank you. That's it.
Right?
I'm good. Thank you.
Cora?
No questions. Thank you.
Joe?
No questions.
And I don't have any questions either. So I'll turn it over to Matt to enter the public testimony into the record.
So this is the written comment for 155 Westminster Road, file V-050-1920 area variance request for the May 7th, 2020 Zoning Board of Appeals hearing. All written comments were due May 6, 2020 at 5 p.m. for inclusion into the record. I will read the comments received for this project since publication of the staff report. All of the written comments can be found within the staff report. Please note that all comments were provided to the board in advance of this hearing. I have, I believe, 2 additional letters. Yes, one is from George and Margot Novak of 100 Harvard Street. Dear Zoning Board, we reside in the city of Rochester at 100 Harvard Street. We have resided in our home for the past 48 years. Bear with me, guys. I'm going to scroll down to the... So these are the additional public comments. I'm going to start again. Dear Zoning Board, we reside in the city of Rochester at 100 Harvard Street. We have resided at our home for the past 48 years. We own and manage 30 properties with over 130 apartment units. Virtually all are located in the greater East Park and Monroe Avenue area. Hence, we have a pulse on the residents and the real estate investors in our area. We have, through the years, successfully deconverted several properties as well as created more useful living areas of third-floor units with approvals from the city of Rochester. Eric Anderson and his wife are closely aligned with our views of proper and successful management of real estate rental units. They purchased a deteriorating zombie house in bank foreclosure next to one of their properties and successfully renovated it to current standards with their own funds. The Andersons own several other properties in the Park Avenue area and screen tenants and maintain the properties in good condition. It is unfortunate that we could not physically appear before the full board so they could evaluate our strong emotional passion in support of the applicant. We need more people willing to invest properly in the city of Rochester. Therefore, it is without hesitation that we recommend that Eric Anderson's request for a variance at 155-157 Westminster be granted. Respectfully submitted, yours truly, George and Margot Novak. And there is one additional piece of comment from Bill Towler of 160 Westminster Road. The plan submitted by Eric Anderson is nicely done. The apartment will be a valuable addition to 155 Westminster Road. I still think that the density envisioned by the R2 zoning is appropriate, but since you've already allowed increased density through a variance, which is the important consideration, this is not a game changer. And that is all of the additional public comment for that case.
Matt, Dave Carr, I want to finish off. Park Megs, he said he received some reports from Park Megs. Do we have anything from that?
Yep, so I'll pull that up. That is in the staff report that you have. And I will pull that up. Here we go. This is from Tom LaDuca, president of Park Megs Neighborhood Association, and it's on the screen now. That was included in the original staff report. Is that what you were looking for, David?
Well, I can't see the screen. I just want to know, was they in favor or against?
The Park Megs Neighborhood Association Board of Directors recommends approval of this application.
Okay, that's all I want to know. Thank you.
Okay, you're welcome.
It seemed like all the testimony was positive, so.
Yes, and then the applicant, of course, has their 5-minute rebuttal if they'd like.
So if you guys have 5 minutes to, I don't know if you want to rebut anything that was just said, but.
I'm really happy with all of our neighbors, getting on board with our project and being really, really supportive and wonderfully taking the time and effort to put everything in. So I'm thrilled at it. I'm really humbled by the comments and the nice things that people had to say about us. It's a testament of, doing the footwork and getting out there and knocking on doors and finding out phone numbers and talking to the people. Even the ones that didn't approve of you once upon a time, they could come back and say, you know what, oh, wow, I didn't understand what your intentions really were. So I've learned a great lesson through it, and I think it was a really great experience for us.
Thank you, guys. So we're going to close case number 5.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Have a great night.
6.
Right, we will get started with case number 6. Case number 6.
Matt, Dave Carr.
Yes.
Before we start case number 6, I have to recuse myself from this hearing because of my involvement with the project.
Yes, okay. And so we will have you stand by for deliberations of the other cases at the close of the public hearing.
Thank you.
Thank you. Case number 6 is file number V-051-1920. It's an area variance request at 8-14 Mark Street, located in the R1 Low Density Residential District. The applicant is Akila Johnson of True North Rochester Mark Street LLC, and the purpose is to construct an approximate 35 square foot addition to an existing school, not meeting certain lot area, yard and bulk requirements. And based on the information from the pre-meeting, all board members have visited the site. And so now the chair can move to swearing in the applicants here to present.
Hello, who do we have? I see Eric here. Is there anybody else with you, Eric, to speak, or will you just be speaking tonight?
I'm going to make a presentation, but we might as well swear in Joe Toomey, who's the project architect from Edge Architecture. He's on the line and available to answer any questions. We could also reach out to and get a hold of the owner's rep, but he's not planning on speaking. So let's just
Okay,
swear.
well, I'll just swear the two. Yep, I'll just swear the two of you in. Do you solemnly affirm that the testimony you are about to give in this hearing is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
Yes.
Yes, sir.
Thank you both. 15 minutes is all yours.
Thank you very much. And please, I do not want to take the whole 15 minutes. I don't think any of us need to have that at this point. I do want to echo some of the other comments and say thank you as we're all learning how to do this. This is your first Zoom board meeting. It's my first Zoom board presentation. Had a number of Zoom meetings, but never a full presentation. And yes, it's somewhat different. It's hard to read the room when you're sitting here, but be that as it may. My name is Eric Schaff. I'm with Marathon Engineering. We are located in the city of Rochester, 39 Cascade Drive. The project architect, Joe Toomey, is with Edge Architecture. They're also located in the city of Rochester. We are here tonight requesting approval of variances to construct an addition to an existing building, which will serve as the home for Rochester Prep High School. We have submitted a detailed application with supporting plans and documentation. My intent tonight is simply to hit the highlights. We'd be happy to answer any questions or provide additional detail, but again, a whole volume of information and full design plans were submitted. True North Rochester Prep operates 6 charter schools in the Rochester area, including the recently completed Rochester Prep School over on Andrews Street. True North Rochester Mark Street LLC purchased the properties on Mark Street that were formerly owned by E3 Rochester, and they were used to operate a charter school at this very location. We are looking to relocate Rochester Prep High School to the Mark Street campus in August 2021. We're proposing to construct, and Matt, if you want to skip all these pages and just go to the, I'd like to just talk about the colored site rendering and then the elevations in a few minutes. Again, there's a lot of detailed engineering and so on. We're proposing to construct a 35,000 square foot addition and expand the ancillary parking lot, which is located across Mark Street. The existing school building will be renovated. Enhancements to the exterior of the building are being proposed as well, including a new primary entrance between the existing building and the addition. During the construction design phase, we looked at a number of alternatives and did our best to minimize the variances required. We were not able to totally eliminate them. Accordingly, we are here tonight requesting approval for variances to allow the building to be constructed as shown on the submitted plans. The height of the building addition is lower than that of the original church building. A fence will run along the entirety of the rear property line. The area between the fence and the building will be covered with Riverstone paving stones. On November 12th, 2019, a meeting for the neighbors was held on site at the school. The applicant dropped off flyers to neighbors, dropped off flyers at the local R Center, put an announcement in the Democrat and Chronicle, and asked Carlos Torres from the city's Northeast Neighborhood Service Center to distribute the flyer to their distribution list. The meeting was held and all feedback from that meeting was positive. Subsequently, we made some submission to the city. Site plan findings were issued. We had to apply to the City Planning Commission, and we received their approval to operate as a charter school with ancillary parking. That was back at their March meeting, and we were originally going to appear before you shortly thereafter. We're hoping to start construction as soon as possible. Obviously, with the current pandemic, there are some restrictions. And originally, we were targeting occupancy August 2021 for the beginning of the school year. Hopefully, with a little bit of adjustment and some shortcuts, maybe we'll still be able to make that. In summary, this project repurposes the recently vacant building, which was last used as a charter school, as well as other adjacent properties being repurposed. All of this is consistent with the goals of the city's comprehensive plan. These improvements to the building will benefit adjacent properties and improve the overall character of the neighborhood and serve as a benefit to both the neighborhood and the community at large. the previous charter school had a positive impact, Rochester Prep will likewise have an equal or greater positive impact. We respectfully ask that you grant approval for this project. Again, tried to be short, concise, and brief. Let's just show the pretty picture from the architect, that one. And I don't know if it's possible to enlarge the upper left, but that's basically a rendering of what the building will look like. And again, Joe and I are here to answer any questions that you may have.
Okay, thank you guys so much. I really appreciate it. I'm going to start with Jim for questions.
Not at this time.
Okay, Lashana.
Hi. So I do have I have a couple of questions. The first is in regards to some of the information that I read in the staff report. In a couple of the points, the findings in your seeker, they talk about issues with busing and the queuing of busing and you know, how all of that student drop-off pickup is going to impact that location. And another one of the pictures that Matt had went through in here shows, you know, you guys having this large parking lot and things like that. And I just wanted you to kind of speak to what's going on with that and how those issues are going to be resolved. And the reason I ask it is because I am actually, one of my daughters does attend Rochester Prep, and the site that's on Bernard Street has a lot of issues as it pertains to busing and the overall traffic flow over there. And I'm hoping that this site won't have that same issue as it pertains to the traffic issues that have come up, because I don't really see a plan for that.
I'd be happy to go into as much detail as you'd like. I will say that this was part of the review by the both the city as part of their site plan review process, as well as the City Planning Commission's review and granting of our approval to operate a charter school. And that's primarily where those things were focused. In addition, we met with the City Traffic Control Board and reviewed the plan, not only for the bus queuing, but for the no parking sign modifications and those types of things that we're proposing. And again, that was all approved. One of the things that we'll do is we have a queuing plan. The buses will line up on Mark Street. A substantial number of the properties on Mark Street are either owned by Rochester Prep or the city. There are not that many houses that are occupied at the moment. In one sense, that's unfortunate, but it does help Rochester Prep with their plans. As you can see on this rendering, we own a fair amount of frontage along Mark Street. The plan will be to have the buses queue up here, discharge, and obviously in the afternoon load there. Over on Watkin Terrace to the north, there is a parent drop-off area for the small number of students that are driven in private vehicles. In addition, I will point out that the smaller buses, mini buses, if you will utilize that area as well. What additional information would you like? I'd be happy to give as much detail, but don't want to go overboard here.
Lashana, did you have any more questions?
The reason, nope, I had to unmute myself. The reason why I asked is because it indicates that there's no undesirable change as it relates to the character of the neighborhood, and the detriment of the nearby properties will be created by the granting of the variance. And that area over there is definitely, you know, we know it's being renovated and a lot of new projects are coming up. But this project is going to be a large project because you're moving, if I understand, you're moving the entire high school, correct? You're not going to have two different locations. You're only having one.
That is my understanding of the plan as well. We did submit the projected enrollment. It's relocating over, but it really doesn't grow over the future. It's more organic growth. We're relocating the high school from Andrews to here, and then a little bit of organic growth over the next few years.
Okay, and so what, and forgive me because I don't know, but how many students are actually going to be housed at this school?
A little over 500. The projections that I was provided were 508 to be precise. In the first year, growing to 535 3 years later. And again, that's in the more than enough space. That's one of the reasons we're constructing this large addition, is in order to provide a quality education space, including space for physical education and those things. And we did model the number of buses and showed that they would fit on Mark Street without blocking the driveways and so on. And again, that was reviewed by the city as well as the Traffic Control Board. And the City Planning Commission granted our special permit in order to operate as a school in that location with those numbers of students. Did that address all of your questions? If not, I'd be happy to give more data.
I think, well, you've answered the question, so thank you.
Okay, Lorraine?
I was just studying this. So you're basically, I say hello first. You're basically off by 20% for the maximum lot coverage, correct? Is that right?
Yes, the lot coverage is written for a residential district, of which schools are an allowed use, but typically schools and certain other things that require a special permit in order to operate in a residential district, quote unquote, have trouble meeting those types of overall requirements.
Why is that?
Simply because in an urban area, there isn't as much land per se in order to build a high quality educational facility and still have a large amount of unutilized quote unquote space, if you will.
So would you say that was in accordance to the side yard setback as well and the rear yard? Are you saying because of the urban environment?
Yes, in order to, we looked at trying to comply with the size requirements, if you will, in terms of setbacks, due to the internal layout of the building. And again, the architect can speak to us a little better than I can, but you get into hallways, classroom sizes, configurations, and trying to put together what is necessary to meet all the different building codes, as well as have a efficient and effective educational experience. And it just, you know, you could cut back a little bit, and they did in order to make it fit.
Okay.
And we actually shrank it a little more, but this was as far as it could go.
Okay. Okay. Oh, well, thank you for your explanation. That's all.
Thank you very much. Cora?
No, I don't have any questions. Thank you.
Joe?
Just a quick one. The area across the street from the new building on Mark Street, you have a outlined in a black line. That green space, is that additional parking or is that recreational space?
It's recreational space at the moment. The additional parking you'll see in the darker color gray. The existing parking across the street is in the lighter gray. So we are expanding that parking lot. And we had to get permission from the CPC because by code it's across the street and therefore an ancillary lot. We're enhancing it with landscaping, updating the current lighting to be night sky compliant, which it was not, and that type of thing. In addition, as a side note, I will say that right now the property is comprised of, I believe the number was like 23 separate lots. One of the things that we have committed to do is to make a north and a south campus, if you will. We're not able to make one lot because of the street running through it, but we are going to clean that up somewhat as well.
Okay. Hey, Matt, quick question for you on page 8 of the findings. Is that a typo in the minimum side yard setback? 230 feet is proposed. It should be 23, right?
You said page 8?
Yeah.
I believe that was probably talking about the west side setback.
Oh, is that what you're referring to?
Oh, yeah, Eric, you're talking about toward Hudson Avenue?
Yes, I'm trying to get to page 8 of the findings, but
let me go to the.
Yeah.
So, give me 1 second. I think we need to refer back here. So, Joe, what you're looking at, and Tom Kisior, the site plan reviewer, is on here. Tom, we're looking at page 7. So, Joe, you're looking at B. If you go back to page 7, that category that it's in is part of the ancillary parking lot.
Oh, okay.
So that refers back to the ancillary parking lot. And then that was all part of these boxes on 7, 8, and 9 were part of the CPC approval or what needed approval from the City Planning Commission. And then number 3, which begins on page 9 of the staff report, shows the lot coverage, side yard setback. So yes, side yard setback, but just to the east, the rear yard, and then the building height.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
And I just have a few questions. That the street, Mark Street, is going to remain a one-way, correct?
Yes, sir.
Correct.
And just tell me a bit about your thought process, because this the setback is tough for me right up against the house. Was there any thought process on purchasing the property on Hudson Avenue and doing a configuration where you didn't have to butt right up against these houses closer on Mark Street? What? Just give me just walk me through your design thought and your design process of the school. Because I just think there could have been an opportunity here to build on the other side of the school where their new addition was recently done a few years ago, where it wasn't so, where it didn't butt up right up against the homes specifically, because this is going to be a major character change, not only the building, but what the building will draw with 500 students in a neighborhood and on a street. In a street that looks like there's no outdoor recreation for students, which I think is a big knock on the school. So can you just walk me through that?
Sure, to a little bit, and then I'll let Joe Toomey, our architect, jump in as well. And again, there is that space that we talked about earlier opposite Mark Street, a little bit for outdoor recreation. But again, is it an ideal campus? No. So you make do with what's available and what they can do. They purchased the properties as much as they could to the east along Mark Street in order to accommodate the size of the building. As you were suggesting, going to the west, it simply doesn't provide enough space in order to expand the educational build and create the educational experience that they want to for the students.
How so? Be more specific for me. I don't understand.
The space to the west just isn't large enough. I'm going to let Joe get in there.
Yeah, I think I think when you're trying to accommodate a cafeteria space for that amount of students that they're looking to house, and a regulation gymnasium, that corner lot just didn't provide that amount of lot that the school needed to expand for the student count they were looking to get to or house in that facility. And the space to the west of the east of the building is an existing open lot today, so it just seemed natural to try to utilize that space for the addition.
Okay, so because this is because it was hard for me to tell them what I received in the mail because the prints just weren't great. So I am seeing the gymnasium now. So the majority of that new the majority of the new building is going to hold a cafeteria, gymnasium. How many classrooms is it going to hold? It's just tough for me to really see with the markup I have in the mail because it's.
So the total building will house about 40 classrooms. There's a portion over the center, just left of that little recess in the front sidewalk, which is some additional classrooms to try to house the students that are required. And below that is the cafeteria. And then to the right of that notch in the front area is the gymnasium. And then we tried, along with trying to account for the required toilet rooms and corridors required in those type of facilities, we have done our best to compact the footprint as much as possible.
And so the church will have renovations. I see the new addition from 2016. There's no needed renovations there in that current building?
Just finishes for the most part. And we're trying to renovate some windows.
Okay. I have no further questions. I'll turn it over to Matt to read in the public testimony.
Yes, so this is the written comment for 8-14 Mark Street, file V-051-1920. This is for the May 7th, 2020 zoning board hearing. All written comments were due May 6th, 2020 at 5 p.m. I will read the comments that were received since the publication of the staff report. All other written comments can be found within the staff report. I don't believe there are any. I believe what we have is just what I'm going to read. And please note that all comments were provided to the board in advance of this hearing. The first written comment comes from Amber Medley of 89 Clay Avenue. Dear sirs and madams of the Rochester Zoning Board of Appeals, I would like to submit my support for the proposed building addition at the existing school located at 8-14 Mark Street. As a member of the Rochester community, I can attest to the positive impact Rochester Prep and Uncommon Schools have had in the lives of my children. Rochester Prep has always made me feel like nothing less than family. They are nurturing and loving, and I wouldn't choose a different school for my kids for this reason alone. I like that once they start with Rochester Prep, they can stay through high school, excuse me. A permanent home for the high school would create a greater sense of security for families, knowing that our kids can continue with the best possible education for our children. I believe the proposed addition will provide Rochester Prep High School with the space and facilities needed to make the campus our permanent home. Again, Amber Medley of 89 Clay Avenue. The next one comes from Ashley Austin of 147 Oak Lawn Drive. Dear sirs and madams of the Rochester Zoning Board of Appeals, I would like to submit my support for the proposed building addition at the existing school located at 8-14 Mark Street. As a member of the Rochester community, I can attest to the positive impact Rochester Prep and Uncommon Schools have had in the lives of my children. My children are currently enrolled at the J Street campus, 2nd, and Brook Street campus, 8th. Thanks to all the hard work and dedication from my daughter's teachers, they're both high honor roll students. I recommend this school to everyone I come across with children. The teachers and staff know all the children on a personal level. The new building will be great for our scholars. They deserve a new building and a great high school experience. I believe the proposed addition will provide Rochester Prep High School with the space and facilities needed to make the campus our permanent home. Again, from Ashley Austin of 147 Oak Lawn Drive. The next one comes from Atashia Walker of 475 Melville Street. Dear sirs and madams of the Rochester Zoning Board of Appeals, I would like to submit my support for the proposed building addition at the existing school located at 8-14 Mark Street. As a member of the Rochester community, I can attest to the positive impact Rochester Prep and Uncommon Schools have had in the life of my daughter, Terralyn Winbush. My daughter has been a scholar at Rochester Prep for the past 5 years. I have been impressed since day one on the quality of the school and level of education my daughter has received over the years. Terralyn's exceptional reading, writing, and math skill development has been a test of the level of care, patience, and excellence the teachers and staff have instilled in her. I believe the proposed addition will provide Rochester Prep High School with the space and facilities needed to make the campus our permanent home. Again, from Atashia Walker, 475 Melville Street. The next one comes from Jennifer Rivera. Here is my letter of support. Please let me know if you need anything else. I am blessed to say that I have 2 children that have attended or currently attends Rochester Prep. My oldest son was a founding student at Rochester Prep High School, and he now attends Rochester Institute of Technology, majoring in Management Information Systems. My youngest is a current high school freshman. Due to our PHS rigorous classes, my younger son was afforded the opportunity to take the PSAT, which has already led him to receive college admission information. I say all of this to say that Rochester Prep truly stands by its mission of getting kids to and through college. Having this facility will not only allow students to continue the amazing trajectory with rigorous academics, but allow them the green space they need to start incorporating athletics as well into their overall high school experience while serving many students to come. And we have one more public comment. This one comes from LaShondra Ashford, and it states, "Dear sirs and madams of the Rochester Zoning Board of Appeals, I would like to submit my support for the proposed building addition at the existing school located at 8-14 Mark Street. As a member of the Rochester community, I can attest to the positive impact Rochester Prep and Uncommon Schools have had in the lives of my children. My son entered Rochester Prep with an IEP when he was in kindergarten. Within 1 academic school year, my son was able to read and write complete sentences with the support of Rochester Prep curriculum and staff. After monitoring his progress, my son met grade level expectations and no longer needed intervention. I recall feeling like I failed my son because he wasn't meeting milestones or reading expectations. J Street campus kept me informed, provided me with resources, and developed a partnership between home and school so he can meet his goals. I cried during my son's reevaluation as I heard the words, 'Your son no longer needs special education services.' On the other hand, my daughter entered Rochester Prep when she was in 5th grade. She is now in 9th grade and above grade level. She is on honor roll, gained exposure from college tours, as well as career exploration for post-high school. Rochester Prep norms have contributed to my children's academic growth. In fact, Rochester Prep offers my brown children an equal educational opportunity while providing hope for parents like myself. My daughter talks about colleges outside of New York State. Her vocabulary, writing awareness, and knowledge exceeds most 9th grade students I work with in the community. I appreciate Rochester Prep rigorous, adaptable, inviting, and fun culture that has been tailored towards their scholars' cultural, societal norms. I believe the proposed addition will provide Rochester Prep High School with the space and facilities needed to make the campus our permanent home. And that concludes all of the written feedback for the case.
Thank you very much, Matt. The applicants, you'll have 5 minutes. As I said last time, I don't think you want to rebut that testimony, but you can add any additional feedback if you would like.
At this point, I think all we'd like to do is emphasize again, we tried to be considerate to the neighbors. The one side setback, we extensively landscaped along the whole edge that is going to be closest to the neighbors. And in the rear yard, the advantage is it's the rear yard for us, as well as the neighbors to the north. We held a neighborhood meeting, only received positive feedback. And again, we believe it is a reasonable approach and a benefit to the community. And it's just a great looking building, and I think it'll be a welcome project. Thank you for your time.
Thank you very much.
I don't have anything else to add. I appreciate your time this evening.
Thanks, Joe, and thanks, Eric. We're going to close case number 6 and move on to case number 7.
Matt, Dave Carr again.
Yes, sir.
I have to excuse myself from this project because of my involvement. And
thank you.
Do you want to do a recusal for him, Matt, for 7, 8, and 9 right now? Just do it all at once, or you want to do it for each case?
I'll have him do it for each case because we're going to hear it differently.
I'll do it all at once.
Yeah, we'll do it separately because they're separate cases.
Okay.
Thank you, David. Case number 7 is file V-052-1920. It's an area variance request at the following addresses known as Parcel 1. 562-566, 570, 576-590 Joseph Avenue, 615, 621, 625 Clifford Avenue, 1, 2, 3, 4, and 6 Theodore Street. All properties located in the C1 Neighborhood Center District. The applicant is Ray Weatherby of CDS Life Transitions, and the purpose is to construct a 5-story, 953 square foot mixed use building not meeting certain lot area and yard requirements. And for cases 7 through 9, all 7 board members visited the site. And I just want to make note before you swear in the applicants to the chair here, the site plan review project reviewer is also on this call. There are additional questions about the site plan review process.
Okay, thank you. Ray, how are you? Who do you have with you tonight?
Hi, thank you. I'm well. I'm here with Jess Sudol with Passero and Associates. They are our civil engineer for the property, and we certainly thank the board for your time. I'd just like to briefly mention that CDS Life Transitions is a mission-based nonprofit. We've operated.
Can I stop you for a second before you? Can I swear you? So the both of you are the only ones that will be speaking, correct?
Yes, that's correct.
Okay, let me swear both of you in, and then you can go ahead. Do you solemnly affirm that the testimony you are about to give in this hearing is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
Yes, sir.
Yes.
Okay, go right ahead.
Okay, thank you. Again, just a little bit of background about CDS. We're a mission-based nonprofit organization. We've been based here in Webster for a little over 40 years now. We primarily provide programs and services and housing for individuals with intellectual and developmental disabilities. However, over the past 10 years, we've also furthered our mission to provide affordable and integrated supportive housing in upstate New York. We have several facilities that we develop and manage, and we're looking forward to furthering our mission here in the city of Rochester by providing some greatly needed affordable and supportive housing at the Clifford Avenue development. To that end, I will hand it off to my colleague, or excuse me, our civil engineer, Jess Sudol with Passero, to tell you more of the details pertaining to the project itself.
Good evening. My name is Jess Sudol with Passero Associates. I want to echo previous applicants' comments to city staff and to the board, and just our appreciation for putting this together this evening. Although the project does have 3 different items on the agenda because they are 3 different lots, I think what I'd like to do is just give an overall explanation of the project, and then we can dive into the details of each specific lot and the related variances, because as someone might have mentioned at the pre-meeting, it's not 3 individual projects. It is just, one project, and, that stands together. So it's a mixed-use project that spans from Clifford Avenue over to Mariah Street. There's 164 units in total, also with a retail component that's on the corner of Clifford and Joseph. This very high quality but affordable housing that will be funded through New York State. There's currently 25 individual lots, 23 of which are owned by the city of Rochester, and then 2 which are private owners, but the land is currently under contract. This evening's really the result of a lot of work that's gone into this project. We've been at this for over 2 years. For the first year, all we really did was focus on community engagement. We received about a dozen letters of support through this process from various community groups in the area and churches, et cetera. We've had numbers of different meetings in different churches and different neighborhood organizations. And thus far, we've received a lot of good feedback. We actually took in comments from the community and revised our site plan and revised our program and our unit count and things like that in order to address those comments before we even started the application process with the city of Rochester. From the very beginning, we were told, put as many units as you possibly can on here. We were fortunate enough to work with the city to find a location that had this many vacant and city-owned lots that would allow us to do a project of this scale, which could really have a very significant positive impact on this neighborhood. And it's obviously in a great location with 2 arterial streets in Joseph and Clifford Avenue. Just anecdotally, when we first started, we were told, hey, can you guys get 400 units on here? We need 400 units. I think everybody's aware of the documented need for affordable housing in the city of Rochester. It's The number that's been put out there is 16,000 units. So we were, tasked with trying to address that as best we could with as much density as we could. Before I get into the specifics of the site plan, just to talk a little bit about process, just the way the city's process works out, this evening is really the last major approval that we are seeking. We have completed site plan review. We did get approved through PRC, the Project Review Committee. We also received a rezoning from City Council who support the project to rezone portions of the project to the C1 and the R2 district. We also received our special use permit from the City Planning Commission, along with multiple waivers related to density and setbacks. Very notably, we also received some funding through the home funding source through the City of Rochester, and also received confirmation of funding through the state of New York, which is a milestone all in itself. One of the questions that came up during the pre-meeting was, these drawings appear to be very advanced given that they have not achieved their variances yet. The reason for that is, for starters, in order to engage the state and get what they call green lighted, which essentially means that they will fund the project, we have to provide the drawings at a fairly high level of review. The same thing goes for the funding through the City of Rochester. We, of course, also need them for cost estimating to know that we have a viable project, which we do know now. And of course, the site plan reviews, I think Mr. Kisior mentioned earlier this evening. To talk about how we came up with the plan, what we really wanted to do was focus our density at the intersection of Joseph and Clifford, where building 1 is, which is our 5-story building. I do want to note that, density and building height are not the requested variances for this lot, which is the first one that appears on the agenda. That is simply a setback variance for the front setback. But from there, and I don't know if Matt's driving here, if you can go to, one of those renderings that shows the whole site, but the thought process was really focus the, density in this corner that he's showing, and then transition into the more residential neighborhood as you move east towards Mariah. So, we have the majority, well over half of our density in that single building. Building 2, which is also on Clifford Avenue, then steps down and is not as tall and certainly not as dense. It only has 20 units on it. And then the remaining 5 buildings there, which are covered in the second 2 items on the agenda, those are really what we are calling our townhome style buildings. They will be rental apartments, but they are designed as townhomes to really have that residential feel and to really activate Mariah Street and make it a very much a pedestrian friendly environment. So as you move from west to east, we really have a pretty rapid decrease in the density associated with the project as it relates to building size, number of units, building height, et cetera. One of the first things we also did when preparing this plan here is we relied on the city's 2034 comprehensive planning documents, which recommend, this type of development and housing specifically in this area. For obvious reasons, I think, being located next to Joseph and Clifford provides a lot of opportunities for future residents of this development, most notably the multimodal transportation options associated with being on bus routes and easily walkable neighborhood, and just having really access to the community from this location. This here is looking south with building 1 and lot 1 off to the right. And you can see how we quickly step down in a gradual and deliberate manner till we really get to that residential scale by the time we get to Mariah Street off there to our left. Just talking, a little bit more globally, we really think that a project of this size and density is going to have a tremendously positive impact, on the neighborhood to have this kind of investment. In round numbers, we're talking $50 million, invested in this area, which we think, will really benefit it, not just neighborhood businesses, but the residents, property values. We're really going to see a lot of positive impact from this project. So we're very anxious and hope to get started with it here in the relatively near future. Matt, would you like me to just go into the first item here and address that specifically?
Yeah, so if you could, Jess, maybe talk a little bit about so we're on parcel 1 here, so the proposed building, speak a little bit about that specifically, and then we can get into the other items. I would just direct the board to just remember that the initial testimony about the general overall project that the applicant discussed, but then he can speak in more detail now about this building number one.
Sure. So building number one, again, that's where the majority of our density is. The variances that we are requesting this evening are specifically related to the front setbacks along Joseph and Clifford. And Matt, I don't know if you can kind of scroll back up to the site plan.
Yeah, I'm gonna get a site plan up here. Bear with me 1 second.
Yes, this will do a pretty good job of telling the story. So what you can see here, the yellow line is the right-of-way line from which the setback is measured. And then obviously the lighter color is our building. The Joseph Avenue and Clifford are not at an exact 90-degree angle, but of course our building is. So we take our northwest corner, which is where our main entrance is, it's where the retail storefront is, it's where all of our amenity and office spaces, where we have all the additional glazing to really interact with the streetscape. We've pushed that corner just about as far as we possibly can to get to that right away, where you can see that there's a little angle point there. So from there, we've really balanced and seek to minimize the setback on both of the Joseph and Clifford right away. But just strictly because of the geometry of the parcel, it's impossible for us really, unless we do a funny angle to the building, which creates a lot of inefficiencies, to push the building right up to the right-of-way line. Further, on both Joseph and on Clifford, when you get to the southern part of the leg or the eastern part of the building, we do have residential units on the first floor. And those have, at least on the first floor, there's patios where we want to provide a space for them, an actual outdoor living space. So they're not walking right out onto the sidewalk. And then there's actually balconies above that are attached to the building. Having that minor, a little bit of setback also allows us to increase the security. Of course, there are windows on those walls that go into units, and we don't necessarily want them to be right up against the public sidewalk. So we can create a little bit of buffering, not too much. I think it's still really going to have that city urban feel, but it does give us the ability to add those patios and landscaped areas, both on Joseph and Clifford. But given the scale of the building, it is a fairly big building. I think having a little additional setback for those amenities is appropriate. So again, that's the only two variances on this particular lot that we are requesting. And, again, if, I don't know if you can, put the hand there right over the northwest corner, you can see where the, corner of our building really is pushed up right against that angle point in the right of way. And then we just kind of have to pivot from there to best balance it. And I think we've been able to achieve that. So that's all I have in terms of lot one.
For the board's benefit, I just want to go into a little more detail about the area variances required.
And I can add to that corner variance as well.
I'm sorry, Tom?
I can add a little information on that corner.
Yeah, could you go into some detail just about the opposite corner that's listed on the staff report? Because I think it gets a little...
Yep, so the corner lot, actually, there are 3 setback requirements, so it's a little strange and a little complicated to meet. One requirement is 0 to 5 feet, and then the second requirement has 2 parts to it. One is that it reflects, that has an average front yard depth of the buildings on the block. So in this case, there's only 1 building on the block. And then it's also supposed to reflect the setbacks of the buildings on the opposite side of the street. So if you were looking down the street, in theory, you would want the buildings to kind of line up as you were traveling down each street. So they're kind of tasked with meeting 3 setback requirements that are related but very complicated. So I think that and on top of the regular lot line is kind of what they're dealing with.
Yeah, I think in every case, the intent of the code is to get the building as close to the street as possible. And that's what we've done. We've got it as close to the street as possible.
Okay, so that was just so the board understands the many different ways the code is, not the code is applied, but the many different ways that sort of what the applicant is saying. The intent is to get the building in our commercial districts built along the street. And, the reason for the setbacks from the right of way are, of course, to maintain that street wall, which creates the urban vibrancy and having active storefronts on the first floor. But this area here is set back a little bit more, but it'll still be patio and sidewalk and whatnot. So just to clarify. So if the applicant doesn't have anything else, the chair can move into questions.
Matt, just one quick question for clarification. And so case number 8 is coming before us for building height. Can just for the board understanding, why didn't case number 7 have to come, didn't have any building height requirements for residential? Can you just talk about about?
So, yep. So this building, building number 1 is in a different zoning district than the building on parcel 1 is in a different zoning district than the buildings on parcel 2. The C1 neighborhood center district where building 1 is located does not have a height requirement. The residential district, which you'll see in the case 8 buildings that you're referring to, has a height.
Yeah, thank you. I just wanted that for.
Yep. Nope. That's why you don't see it. Yeah, it's a good question.
Jim, we'll start with you.
I don't have any questions for this case.
Lorraine? No, I'm sorry, Lashana. I skipped you. I'm sorry, Lashana. Is Lashana with us, Matt?
I think she's having some internet issues.
Yeah, she's with us. Just looks like her audio and mute is on. Her audio is off and her mute is on.
Okay, I'm gonna skip to Lorraine and we'll come back to Lashana.
I don't have any questions simply because my variance questions have been answered. So thank you.
Thank you. Cora?
I do have some questions. It is a lot of vacant land over there, so it's of course very good to see something go in there that is so much needed. I do wonder if there is any designated green space, or is it all pretty much filled in with all of this housing and mixed use space?
Yeah, sure. There's really 2 central green spaces. There's one that's really inside the L on the backside of building 1, where there's some hardscape and greenscape landscape areas. Yeah, exactly, Matt, right where your hand is there. And one of the elements of this project, but I didn't get into too much detail, is Theodore Street, which enters between buildings 1 and 2 right there. Is currently a public right-of-way, and it's really a dead-end alley that only services one property, which we are acquiring. And I think if you asked anybody in the city, one-way dead-end alleys are not a very desirable thing. So we're going through the process of abandoning the alley, which allows us to really, centralize our parking and make it really efficient by doing that. And by that, I mean, we can then have parking right off of that drive aisle, whereas if it remained a right of way, that wouldn't be the case. So what that's allowed us to do is create a playground, green space, central area right behind building 4. So right off to the right there, right? So that whole area extending up to building 2 is all allocated green space for the project. So I hope that answers that question.
No, it does, definitely. Because I imagine there's probably going to be a lot of kids in that area, so some green space and playground. That sounds like that sounds good. Also, just curious, are the townhomes that you mentioned, are there going to be any opportunities for purchase or any kind of incentive for like first-time buyers or anything to that regard? Or are they all going to remain rental?
They're going to remain rental, just the way that the financing is structured through the state, and we have to make guarantees over very long periods of time and have capital accounts for improvements to assure that they're always maintained a very high quality, so they have to remain rentals.
And then lastly, is it just the one largest building that's going to be mixed use and the rest are going to be strictly residential?
Yes, that is correct.
Okay. All right. Thank you so much.
Joe?
No questions on this case.
Is Lashana back with us?
I'm taking a look now.
No questions.
No questions?
No questions.
She's back.
Okay. I've only got a comment, and it's probably for Ray for CDS, and it goes on to a bit what Cora was talking about overall for the project. Ray, who do you expect to live in the first building in parcel 1?
Well, the entire project is affordable for families and some special needs groups who earn up to 30, 50, 60% of the area median income. We have a range of unit sizes as well, 1, 2, and 3, and even 4 bedroom units, which came to pass as a result of some of our meetings with the community. Some folks actually asked us, originally we only had up to 3 units. Some folks asked, well, what about larger families? So as a result, we've actually added some 4-bedroom apartments. So, and maybe to talk a little bit, something we haven't mentioned is we are setting aside 20 units for survivors of domestic violence. And we've partnered with the Willow Domestic Violence Center to help provide supportive services to help those folks live independently on their own. And this will provide permanent and supportive housing for that group. And we also have another 20 to 30 units we're setting aside for folks who have mental illness. And we're partnering with Helio in Rochester. They'll be providing the same type of supportive services that allow those folks to live independently on their own and remain housed. So we intend a mixture of all of those types of people to live there, both families and special needs groups.
Well, you know, Ray, what you guys are doing it's important, but I think you guys have really missed the mark in a lot of ways. I think in this area within 1,000 feet, there's housing for felons within that green space that you all have identified. I really wish you guys would have thought more about this. You're talking about a massive project, and you're providing such a minor green space for these for families and people with mental health. You know, for me personally, I just need you guys to really think about this, and it's really troubling that some of these things haven't been thought about and thought through, where you have these massive amount of families who need outdoor space, where you have people who are low-income people of color, specifically who have a lot of obesity issues and challenges. You can look at the statistics, but I think it's important for you all just to think about that when you think about project development, because specifically people need to be outside. They need to have the ability to play and have fun. And I just think that this misses the mark, and it's a disservice to those folks. And you probably will disagree with me, but I just wanted to make sure that I put that out on the record. And it's really concerning to me that with the proximity of some halfway houses with this outdoor space, how our kids are going to remain space. And also kids have to go from that housing unit on the corner at parcel 1, they have to go through a parking lot and then cross a street to get to green space. So it's really concerning how this concept came to be, because you don't know how fast people are going to be coming down the street and in and out of parking lots. So it's challenging for me specifically. I just wanted to make sure that I gave that feedback. It's just a statement, not really a question. And I
appreciate your comments, and I can say that it's been a struggle to try to find that middle ground where, as Jess Sudol mentioned in meeting with some of the locals, including Councilman Patterson and the mayor, there were some folks had the attitude of, hey, why can't we have, literally the comment was, why can't we have 400 units here? And they did that with the Hanover houses, and they ended up tearing down. I think that experiment didn't work. That's why we ratcheted it back and tried to say, look, you still have to have parking, you still have to have playgrounds, and you need to have gardens and picnic areas and things that you've mentioned, and that's why we've ratcheted all the way back to 168 units. But we're also, I would just respectfully ask you to consider the fact that there's also a lot of pressure on us as developers to provide just safe, quality, affordable housing for folks that can't find it. That there's over 12,000 people on the city of Rochester's housing, the RHA's housing list who are waiting for housing. A lot of those folks are living in conditions where they're very rent burdened, we've learned through comprehensive plans and market studies and different reports where they're paying 40, 50, 60% of their income on rent because they can't find affordable housing. And a lot of other folks are living in substandard conditions where they rent a room for $500 and they don't have their own bathroom or their own kitchen. And some are even living in worse conditions. So we're trying to really address the, I hear what you're saying, but we're also trying to provide as much high quality, good, decent, affordable housing for folks who can't find it at the same time, while balancing out the site with adequate parking, that, you know, work with the space we have to provide parking. And, you know, there are going to be, as I mentioned before, you know, picnic areas as well as playgrounds and things of that nature. So we certainly
completely understand, and I appreciate you going into that detail. Thank you so much. I'll let Matt go ahead and read the public testimony into the record.
What was I'm sorry, could you repeat the question?
You can read the public testimony into the record for case number 7.
Oh, I'm sorry. Yeah, no, there is no public additional feedback for this case.
Before we go, can I just, and I don't want to start a long conversation, but I just want to kind of piggyback on something that Tyrese, you said. When we talked about there was a mention in the presentation about the walkability of the neighborhood. And when I drove around there, it's definitely not, I wouldn't consider it very walkable. There's churches and corner stores over there. And then of course, all of this vacant space. So I just am wondering maybe what the idea is for that retail space. And I would urge you to consider, you know, filling it with some spaces that are really going to be beneficial to all of this housing, that will really service all of these people, and not just be more, you know, snack foods and office spaces that maybe don't service the community as much as they could.
Yeah, one thing, if I could answer that, that I think I failed to mention is that in addition to the retail space, which we've been talking about, you know, multiple opportunities, though we haven't settled on one, it is, and the CEO of CDS is very much committed to this project serving the community and figuring out what use will best serve the community, whether that's a small grocery type use, that's yet to be determined. But in addition to the retail space, there's also a programmed civic space, and that's in addition to the community room for the residents. And the intent of the civic space is to open it up to community organizations so that they would be able to use our facility, you know, whether that's for holding classes for adults or classes for children, or, you know, something for personal growth. But it's really, there's going to be programs that are specifically focused at getting not just the residents of this project, but also community members, you know, integrated with our project and using that space that's, you know, not currently available, that will be made available to them. And, you know, one of the reasons why we do like this location is because, you know, it's not the most walkable area. There certainly are plenty of sidewalks and pedestrian accommodations. But in addition to the green space that we have on our site, which looks small on this map, but that's also because it's a pretty big site. So the scale of it can get lost pretty easily. And again, that will have playgrounds and you know, actual big playground on it for the children and families. But there are several, you know, 3 or 4 parks that are within a walkable distance, you know, less than a half mile from this site, as opposed to if, you know, we tried to achieve this level of density, you know, elsewhere in the city that didn't have that same adjacency to existing parks. Is, you know, was one of the things that was really attractive for us anyway for this location.
I'd also like to quickly add that to directly answer your question, and that was a very good question, is we met with a lot of community groups, the Alphonse Block Club, the 14621 Block Club, and we were talking originally about perhaps putting a coffee shop in there. We weren't sure what we were going to do, but as we met with the community and talked to them more, what was became clear to us is that there isn't a many like a 7-Eleven type stores where folks can go and get laundry detergent or cleaning supplies, napkins or things like that. And what we are intending to provide a commercial type shop like that in the facility that both the residents and the community can use. So that is our intention, and in working with the community, it seems like that's what they're telling us is needed most. And then finally, just to briefly talk about what Jess mentioned is, yes, we do also intend to have separate and apart from the commercial store, a community civic space that'll be open to both the community and our residents. And we're already working with groups like the, I forget the name of it, the local food bank, and some of the local church groups, and even the Rochester REOC to provide perhaps some after-school learning type programs at the site. So there's been a lot of interest, and we do intend to provide a wide variety of community services out of the community service facility at this location.
Thank you.
Okay. We'll go to we'll close case number 7 and we'll go to case number 8.
Sure. Case number 8 deals with lot 2. Lot 2 contains building number 2, which is the much smaller four-story building. Oh,
Jess, let me just jump in real quick. For the record, I just want to read the information in. No worries. Case number 8 is part of the same project, different parcel, file V-053-1920. It's an area variance at 2325, 2931, and 35 Mariah Street in the R2 medium density residential district. The applicant is Ray Weatherby of CDS Life Transitions, and the purpose is to construct one 4-story, 26,633 square foot multifamily dwelling and one 3-story, 10,743 square foot multifamily dwelling, not meeting certain bulk requirements. And you're up.
All right. Yeah. So again, lot 2 is this is requested height variance. Again, there's no setback or density variances or anything like that, but it does. Yeah, right where that box is where building 2 is located. That's the 4-story building. Again, we're stepping down from the 5-story building that's over at the intersection of Clifford and Joseph. One of the reasons for the 4-story building is we are, trying to achieve, a density that would be, really benefit the neighborhood and give us that core density, which is why we, added the 4-story. And I think this drawing here really does show that transition well, going from 5 to 4 and then down to 3. And the other challenge that we have that's unique to this site is, all of these former single-family lots from houses that were built 100 years ago, when they were demolished and essentially the houses were dumped into the old foundations and then backfilled. So we have like 25 buried houses, and there's a significant cost with going in there during construction and removing all that debris and putting it into a certified landfill. So in order to offset that cost, we might have 10 different foundations just with building 2 that we have to deal with. It's really, we need the additional density to justify developing in that location. And that's for building 2. In terms of buildings, building 4, which is the one behind it, and that's one of the townhome style buildings. And this is going to be a very similar discussion on the next application is, we do need the variance because we exceed the number of stories. But interestingly enough, our actual building height is less than, in terms of feet, what the requirement is or what the threshold is in the zoning district. So we're actually under what that, the 35-foot requirement, but because we are 3.5 stories here, we are above the threshold. So it's kind of weird that we're above one, but under the other. But that's, the reason why we ended up with a variance request. And like I said, it's just a height variance. I think it's, relatively straightforward. But again, I just also want to point out that one of the things that we achieved by working with the PRC and the Planning Commission and having input from city staff, over the course of the last year, we've really significantly brought down the scale of these buildings. I don't know if anyone on staff wants to, talk about that later if that's needed, but we used to have pitched roofs. We used to have larger parapets. We used to have, more defined balcony areas that really gave these buildings a lot more scale and mass. And that has all been trimmed back to the bare minimum in order to, reduce the potential impact of the height as much as practicable. And in the case of building 2, we're not substantially above it. I think it's approximately 10 feet above the threshold. And again, we're actually under that threshold in many ways with the other buildings. We just kind of almost on a technicality exceed the story requirement. Other than that, I don't have a ton to add.
To the applicant's point, I'm wondering if Tom Kisior can
I can jump in.
Speak a little bit about some of the go on to a little bit more about the different changes to the project, some of the different iterations of it, and then the applicant can of course couple that with who they've worked with and that sort of thing.
Sure. So just as Jess mentioned, there was extensive design review and revisions. The project review committee, which is made up of a number of internal and external staff that review major site plans. They took a look at this. They focus a lot on design and initial plans. They felt had a really lot of verticality to them, even though these are generally the same height. A lot of the designs had more vertical elements, less horizontal. There was some tower elements, peaked roofs on the corner building. So a lot of the revisions were trying to take a similar sized building and design in a way to make them feel a little bit shorter. So there's a lot of redesign and extensive back and forth between that group and the applicants.
Thank you, Tom. And then I don't know if the applicant wants to add anything or the chair can open things up to questions.
No, I appreciate your comments there, Tom. We really did put a significant effort into really fitting this in the most appropriate and aesthetically pleasing way. And I think is a collective effort of a number of various boards and staff members and the community itself, we've achieved that.
I guess briefly, I'd like to add something I didn't mention earlier is that the building itself will also have a fitness center that's able, that all the residents are able to use. And in addition to that, about 1 block to the east of the site is Washington Playground. It's a big, several square block park area where folks can walk and exercise and things of that nature. Just forgot to mention that earlier. Thank you.
Thank you very much. We'll open it up to questions. We'll start with Jim.
I just took a quick look and I wasn't able to find out for these buildings, are there any basements?
No, sir.
The former right-of-way or the right-of-way you're going to acquire that comes to a dead end, and you'll be using that for parking to get to your parking spot. Any thought about speed humps for that?
No, that hasn't been mentioned to us yet from the Traffic and Control Board. It's something that we could certainly consider. It's really more of a driveway than it is a road. We're actually decommissioning the current curb cut, which acts like a driveway or acts like a roadway, and putting in a standard driveway section so that speeds are reduced. But that's something that we will consider, moving forward if we think speed could be a potential issue.
Yeah, that just came to mind because of something Cora mentioned in the previous project, and that's it for my questions. Thank you.
Thanks, Jim. Lashana?
Hi, I was wondering what is the occupancy number for this building?
For which building?
Parcel 2. So we're talking just parcel 2.
Correct.
So why don't you give her both buildings, Jess? The one on Clifford and the one the townhouse. Just give her both.
Yeah, so that building right there, number 2, is 20 units. And most of those, they average 2 bedrooms for each unit. And then the townhomes, which are 10 units each, those are where we have a mixture of 3-bedroom units and then the 4-bedroom units, which again, those were really added as a result of community input. So the larger families would have the opportunity to live in one of these townhome style buildings that really looks and feels more like, I don't want to stretch to say a single family home, but not a traditional apartment style building.
Lashana, was that it?
Yep, that's my only question. Thank you.
Thank you. Lorraine?
Actually, I don't have any questions. I'm fine. Thank you.
Okay. Cora,
No questions. Thank you.
Joe?
I wonder if Jess could speak a little bit to the fact that this parcel 2, there's really no parking on it. It's shared with parcel 1, I believe.
Yeah.
And was there any thought to some parking closer to building 2 and 4?
Well, there was, and at one point we actually had a separate lot that was right behind building 4 with a double loaded drive aisle that kind of came off of our driveway. But we felt that it was more important to utilize that space for green space than to have the parking there. And based on our parking demand analysis that was submitted and approved, there's enough parking in the lot behind building 1 to service those residents on lot 2 there.
Yeah, it just seems like it's and I don't know what the percentage of residents that drive, but it just seems like it could be a very long walk, especially in the winter. If you got to park in the back of building 1 and walk all the way over to building 2. I don't know if there's a reservation system where you get an assigned parking space or what. Maybe Ray, you can speak to that. What is the percentage of occupants would drive?
I can jump in here. Again, Ray mentioned that a significant percentage of the occupants are going to be those with mental disabilities, most of which do not drive.
Mm-hmm.
We're projecting that, at the higher end, 50% of the occupants will own a vehicle. And certainly the units are laid out and designed as such that, the units with the higher parking demand are further off to the east, where the parking ratio per unit is higher than it is, when compared to lot 2.
Okay, is there any parking on Maria Street, on-street parking?
On-street parking, yes.
On Maria Street there is, Jess?
Yep.
Okay.
I'd also like to add there are quite a few number of units set aside for families earning up to and below 30% of the area median income, which equates to roughly $15,000 to maybe $17,000, $18,000 a year maximum for you to qualify to live there. We find oftentimes a lot of those residents, don't have cars who fall into that category. And then even those who earn 50 and 60 and higher, if they do have a car, it's typically one car. And so in general, in our affordable housing developments, we find that there's, much less parking needed than, obviously than a typical market rate facility.
Good, thank you.
And my questions were around Joe. I know, is Mariah Street going to be offset with side parking so it'll make you change over, or is parking going to be allowed on both sides? That may be a question for the city.
Yeah, I know they currently park on street on Mariah now. I just don't know if it's
okay. So they do all okay. Yeah, I just had the same concerns Joe had. I still think you're gonna run into these problems with the apartments. I mean, you run an analysis, but you're gonna have boyfriends, girlfriends coming over. You're gonna have, the older son who comes and move home. I just think you're gonna have an issue there with parking. But just want to put my concern out there.
I'm sorry to jump in, but just to address the parking, which again was has had its own independent reviews, but there's a similar project in scale that was built further east in the neighborhood that had similar parking ratios per resident that was completed. And, they have not had any cited parking issues. So that gives us a further level of confidence there.
Did you work on that one, Jess, or?
I did not specifically, but I reviewed the plans in detail and also have visited the facility several times since it's been completed.
Okay, Matt, did you have any public comment for this case?
No additional feedback for this one.
Okay, we'll close case number 8 and we'll move to case number 9.
Okay, we will move into case number 9.
Matt, Dave Carr again. I didn't recuse myself from the last one. You said I had to do all 3. Kind of got by me.
Yeah, so Yep, you just can state right now you're recusing from what was just 8 and then going into 9 now.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you.
Thank you for saying that. Case number 9, final case of the evening, file V054-1920. It is an area variance request known as parcel 3. It's 14, 16, 18, 20, 24, 26, 30, 34, and 36 Mariah Street. Those are the current parcel addresses. R2 medium density residential district, applicant Ray Weatherby of CDS Life Transitions, and purpose to construct 4 3-story, 10,743 square foot multifamily dwellings, not meeting certain bulk requirements. So we are looking at this proposed parcel 3 on the right side of your screen.
Yeah, so I mean, I don't want to belabor any points. You know, this is very much the same, you know, and exactly the same as the previous request for building 4. But that, you know, I don't know if you can go back to that rendering there. Yeah, that's, you can see one of the buildings that's within lot 3 there. Again, we have this unique situation where our building is actually under the threshold when measured in feet, but we are slightly above when measured in stories. You know, one of the things I didn't point out in the previous applications, but I will here as it relates to height, you know, when it comes down to the standards of proof and, well, what could they do, you know, to not need the variance? And, you know, what we would have to do is, you know, we'd have to remove a story from each one of the buildings. And what that would cause us to do in order to maintain the unit count, which we need in order to achieve our funding and to make the project financially work, is those buildings would then have to get bigger to include the same amount of units. And then that would eat up, you know, what precious green space, you know, we do have on the site. So by, you know, having 3 stories on these units here and 4 stories in building 2, that does allow us to open up that centralized green space area, which, you know, isn't huge, but again, it's going to have a playground, it's going to have benches, it is going to have walkways. So that's kind of the what happens if we don't get the variance granted. And specifically on the townhomes, you know, for building 4 on lot 2 and also for all the buildings on lot 3, you know, that top story is where the 4-bedroom or the 4-bedroom units are that were specifically requested of us from the community. So, you know, again, that's more of the same as the previous lot, but happy to answer any questions.
Okay, Jim, any questions?
No questions.
Lashana?
No questions.
Lorraine?
So this is nothing to do with code compliance. I just want to throw this in here. I just want to thank you for specifically focusing on, are all these buildings for, you know, mentally disabled and for domestic violence groups?
That's a very good question. And the best way I can answer that is that the programs that we're using with the state and different types of funding sources to help us provide those supportive services and even pay for the cost to develop these specific units require us to intersperse them throughout the facility, throughout all the buildings. So in other words, we can't just have, say, one wing dedicated to one specific group. They just don't allow that. So they would be interspersed throughout all of the buildings, those special needs units.
Okay, I understand that. Does that make that more of a mixed unit group? Because they're interspersed with a, you know, regular.
It's what they call, they all still have to be affordable. You still have to meet affordability requirements.
Okay.
So technically what they call it is affordable and integrated supportive housing.
Okay, I get that. All right, thank you.
Sure, no problem.
We'll go to Cora.
No questions.
Joe?
Yeah, Jess, could you speak a little bit to the reasoning behind the location of Building 7? It seems that Building 7 would have really made a nice finish to the whole development if it was south of 4 and across from 6, is that? where you create and maintain that streetscape along Mariah Drive?
I'm sorry, Joe, where are you suggesting?
So take building 7.
Yep.
And then I just wanted to know why that wasn't placed, and maybe a property issue, but, and it was brought over to parcel 2 south of building 4 and right across from building 6. So you had this quadrant, a nicely symmetrical quadrant, which creates a nice streetscape along Mariah Street or Maria Street, whatever I can't read it. So right there.
Again, the way we ended up, we had the unit count that we had to achieve. I think it's pretty obvious and intuitive of why, buildings 3, 4, 5, and 6 are all placed to really frame and activate Mariah Street. The only other option for building 7 would be behind building 4. But again, we thought it was important to keep that green space, and that's going to be where our playground is, relatively close to building 1 where the majority of our density is.
So the parcels that are south of building 4 were not available?
Yeah, that's exactly right. I was gonna jump in and mention that we did approach those owners and were unable to secure those properties. We did, however, secure there was 3 other properties to help to in addition to the city-owned property to achieve the site plan that you see now.
Yeah, I'm sorry I missed you there, Joe, but you're right. That would have been nice to have, but as Ray pointed out.
That's what I assumed, but I just wanted to understand.
Yeah, we tried, but we're unsuccessful.
Okay, thank you. That's all.
And I don't have any questions. And Matt, we don't have any feedback as well for case number 9.
Correct. No additional feedback.
Okay, thank you so much, Jess and Ray. I really appreciate you guys for sticking with us this late. Case number 9.
Thank you very much for your time and consideration as well.
All right. Thank you. All right. So give a brief statement, and then we'll take a brief break and then return to deliberation. So this concludes the Zoning Board of Appeals public hearing. We would like to thank all applicants, citizens. The next scheduled hearing will be held on Thursday, May 21st, 2020. This hearing is scheduled to be a virtual meeting, just like this one, and will be streamed live on the Mayor's Office YouTube page. If you have any comments or questions related to the Zoning Board or this hearing, you can email staff at zoningboard@cityofrochester.gov. Again, zoningboard@cityofrochester.gov. We will resume in, we'll say it's 9:34 and say at 9:45. Is that?
That works.
9:45.
9:45? Okay. So we will take a short recess, and 9:45 the deliberations will begin. Thank you, everyone.